Chapter 451. Oh no. Su Xiaoxiao, who was too embarrassed to run out, suddenly ran in, gasping for breath. That your companion. She looked at Luo Qingtong anxiously and pointed outside. She panted and couldn't even finish her sentence. Luo Qingtong's expression changed. Chu Wenhao? What happened to him? Where is he? Bring me there, Luo Qingtong said. With a turn of her body, she brought Luo Qingtong up and dashed outside. In the Tianyu Branch Academy, in a small forest not far from the lower-class dormitory, 2 intermediate-class students surrounded Chu Wenhao with a group of people. You're Chu Wenhao? The youth with a long face on the left looked at him and sneered. How dare a person from a small, inferior country be so arrogant? Don't you know where you are? I think you're tired of living. His face was full of disdain. For people from aristocratic families of Tianyu Empire like them, Chu Wenhao, a student from an inferior country, was like a weed on the ground, not worth mentioning. He dared to speak up for Luo Qingtong. He was looking for trouble. Who didn't know that the imperial family of Tianyu didn't like Luo Qingtong? The 7th princess hated her to the core. Moreover, she offended Zhan Haoping, the 5th student on the genius list. In Tianyu Branch, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with them and make trouble for Luo Qingtong. But she was the fiancée of the 5th prince. They couldn't go too far, otherwise it would be slapping the imperial family in the face. Therefore they stared at Chu Wenhao, who told him to speak up for Luo Qingtong. He was asking for it. Go teach him a lesson. Break the meridians in one of his arms and legs, then kick him out of Tianyu Branch. The intermediate class student with triangular eyes on the right sneered. They had come at someone's behest. The other party was from a side branch of Tianyu's royal family. As long as they crippled Chu Wenhao and kicked him out of the Tianyu Branch College, even if they were expelled from the Tianyu Branch College, their families would still have a meteoric rise under Chu Wenhao's protection. Their talents were only average to begin with. If they continued to cultivate in the Tianyu Branch School, they would only be average. If he could get the other party's protection and promise to raise his family's status in the Tianyu Empire, what was there to hesitate about? Immediately, a group of people surrounded Chu Wenhao. You guys. Chu Wenhao looked at the people surrounding him and was shocked. He didn't think that these people would be so bold as to be so heavy-handed in the Tianyu Branch Academy. One had to know that killing and personal fights were absolutely prohibited in the academy. Once discovered, they would be expelled from the school. However, these people didn't seem to care about this at all. The moment they arrived, they gave out ruthless orders. After the triangular-eyed youth finished speaking, a group of people rushed towards Chu Wenhao. Bang bang bang. A group of people started fighting. The 2 intermediate class students didn't make a move. They stood outside to prevent Chu Wenhao from escaping. Now was the registration period, so there weren't many people walking around the school. Moreover, they were in a remote forest. Once they crippled Chu Wenhao's meridians, it wouldn't matter even if they were discovered. These people's attacks were very ruthless. Just as Chu Wenhao was in dire straits and found it difficult to defend himself, he was ruthlessly knocked to the ground. Chapter 452. Luo Qingtong's figure appeared in the small forest. Bang bang bang. She jumped into the battle circle, and in an instant, those who were besieging Chu Wenhao fell to the ground. The 2 intermediate class students who were guarding the periphery were caught off guard. By the time they reacted, Luo Qingtong had already taken care of their followers. You. The 2 of them looked at the young girl in front of them angrily. Why would Luo Qingtong appear here? They clearly saw her and Chu Wenhao separated and the latter went back alone. That was why they blocked her here. Luo Qingtong, get out of the way. This Chu Wenhao has offended us, he must pay the price. The long-faced youth said with a calm face. The triangular-eyed youth beside him also looked at Luo Qingtong with a cold face. The 2 of them were very surprised by Luo Qingtong's appearance. But even so, they must teach Chu Wenhao a lesson. Otherwise, if they missed this opportunity, they would be vigilant. If they wanted to attack Chu Wenhao again and cripple him, it would not be possible. Thinking like this, the 2 of them were very unyielding. Oh? Then what if I don't let you go? Luo Qingtong looked at the 2 of them coldly. She swept a glance at Chu Wenhao, who was lying on the ground. Seeing the injuries on his body and the traces of being stepped on the back of his hand, the bloody light in her eyes flickered in an instant. Who told you to touch him? Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. Chu Wenhao had just entered the academy and had not even returned to his own dormitory. How could there be people who specially blocked this place to wait for him? Offended them? Luo Qingtong did not believe a single word of these people's words. Her gaze swept across this remote little forest. If not for Su Xiaoxiao coincidentally seeing this group of people blocking Chu Wenhao's way into this little forest and seeing that they did not have good intentions, she quickly ran over to inform her. She was afraid that if something happened to Chu Wenhao here, no one would know. How could these people target Chu Wenhao for no reason? The only possibility was that they were targeting her. They wanted to attack him by dealing with Chu Wenhao. It had to be said that this method had successfully angered her. Luo Qingtong didn't have any other problems, but she was protective. He was very protective. Anyone who dared to touch her people would die. Even if he didn't die, he would suffer a fate worse than death. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed coldly as she looked at these people, thinking about how to deal with them. That long-faced youth was infuriated by her words. Luo Qingtong, don't be so shameless. Since you insist on getting involved in this mess, we'll fulfill your wish. The two of them looked at each other and immediately reached a consensus. If Luo Qingtong wanted to court death, then they wouldn't stop her. Anyway, they didn't take the initiative to attack Luo Qingtong. She was the one who came to their door and bumped into their attack. Even if she was accidentally injured, she couldn't blame them. Was that not the case? Maybe they could even gain more benefits because of this matter. The two of them thought so and instantly laughed sinisterly as they attacked Luo Qingtong. Rumble. The two's movements were very ruthless. There was a faint sound of wind and thunder as they attacked Luo Qingtong directly. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed with blood-red light. In an instant she had locked on to their fatal points. She just needed to hit them and let them quietly wait for their deaths. At that time, no one would be able to find out that it was her. Chapter 453. Bah! Where did this bastard come from? He actually dares to bully people here. While speaking, a tower-like figure suddenly appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Bang bang bang. The attacks of the two youths were blocked in an instant. Luo Qingtong also retracted the power that she was about to use. Yuan Hu. The two intermediate class students who were forced to retreat looked at the sturdy youth who appeared in front of them and their faces instantly turned ugly. Yuan Hu, Yuan little tyrant. The other party is the tyrant of the imperial capital. In the circle of aristocratic families of the same age, almost no one dares to provoke him, because he was born with divine strength and also activated the petrification soul seal. If not for the fact that his petrification soul seal was a trash soul seal, it would be useless after everyone advanced to the martial lord realm. His future was absolutely limitless. Because it was a trash soul seal and his martial arts talent was extremely poor, he could only rely on brute force to fight. Therefore, after confirming that he would not be able to advance any further in the future, he was thrown into the trash class to dawdle. But even so, this little tyrant is a strange existence in the Tianyu branch that is difficult to provoke. There is no other reason. With his innate divine strength combined with the petrification soul seal, even a martial lord would not be able to easily break through his defense. Therefore, although the little tyrant may not have any opportunities to advance in the future, but when it comes to oppressing low-level warriors, it is a sure thing. When the two intermediate class students saw that he came out to meddle in other people's business, their faces instantly turned green. Little tyrant, this is a misunderstanding. They just wanted to teach that advanced class student called Chu Wenhao a lesson. Who doesn't know that Yuan Hu regards the lower class as his territory? Whoever dares to bully the people of the lower class will be beaten back by him. How unlucky were they to meet him? The two intermediate class students also had a painful expression on their faces. They wanted to explain, but Yuan Hu did not listen to them and directly rushed up to beat them up. Scram. Do you really think my eyes are blind? The next time you dare to bully our lower class people, I will kill you. Yuan Hu said as he kicked each of them and directly sent them flying. The latter two did not dare to resist. Of course they could not resist and could only leave dejectedly. When he left, he didn't even dare to let out a fart. Looking at their departing figures, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. The blood-red light in her eyes flickered, bloodthirsty and cold. Are you that Luo Qingtong? After teaching those people a lesson, Yuan Hu turned around and looked at her arrogantly. The words you said during the registration were so damn satisfying. Just because of those words, I'll take care of you from now on. He patted his chest and said, if anyone dares to bully you in the future, just tell me. As Yuan Hu was speaking, he suddenly smelled a trace of medicinal fragrance. Luo Qingtong had taken out a bottle of medicinal liquid for Chu Wenhao to drink to prevent any hidden injuries in his body. Little Overlord Yuan's eyes lit up as soon as the medicinal fragrance entered his nose. He had been beaten up by his father, Great General Yuan, ever since he was a child. He could tell whether the medicine was good or bad just by smelling it. This trace of medicinal liquid's fragrance was definitely a good medicine. Who would have thought that the other party would have such a good item on him? Yuanhu reached out to grab it without hesitation. Hey, wait. It's too wasteful to let him use this medicinal liquid. You should give this bottle to me as a filial gift. Let him use other medicine. Yuan, who was used to being overbearing. How could the title of Little Overlord Yuan be fake? In the entire Chanyu Imperial City, other than a few people's things that he could not touch, he could snatch the other people's things however he wanted. Now that he had taken a fancy to Luo Qingtong's medicinal liquid, he naturally did not hesitate to snatch it back. He had helped them, so wasn't it normal to give this medicinal liquid to him? Anyway, that kid wouldn't die, so what medicinal liquid couldn't he use? However, he did not know that those people had the intention to cripple Chu Wenhao. The latter's meridians had already suffered some injuries in the fight just now. Luo Qingtong took out this medicinal liquid to treat the injuries to his meridians. Chapter 454. The next second. She suddenly grabbed Yuanhu's hand and pulled out a silver hairpin from her hair bun. With a bang, it pierced through his wrist and nailed his hand to the ground. You can have my things if I give it to you. If I don't give it to you. Luo Qingtong looked at him coldly. Then you can't snatch it. Do you understand? Yes. Yuanhu wanted to curse, but he didn't know why. When he raised his head and met Luo Qingtong's eyes, he felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly had a feeling that Luo Qingtong was being merciful to him. Otherwise, his fate would not be as simple as having his hand nailed to the ground. In fact, it was true. If not for Yuanhu's meddling, he didn't know what would happen to him. Just look at Master Lu, who dared to exchange Luo Qingtong's medicine in the Black Field. Yuanhu's fate would not be any better than his. How could Luo Qingtong's things be so easy to snatch? Strangely enough, when Luo Qingtong's silver hairpin was inserted into Yuanhu's wrist, there was no blood at all. Moreover, it didn't hurt at all. It was as if it wasn't his wrist. It just made him unable to exert any strength. When Chu Wenhao finished drinking the medicine, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and took back the silver hairpin. In an instant, Yuanhu regained his strength. How did you do it? He looked at his wrist curiously and found that other than a bloody hole, his wrist was not injured at all. What was going on? Moreover, his petrification soul seal defense had no effect on her attack. Yuanhu was shocked. Just now he was shocked by Luo Qingtong's gaze. Only now did he react. Wasn't the process of Luo Qingtong's silver hairpin too smooth? One must know that even if a martial lord expert could temporarily release his inner strength, it would not be so easy to break his defense. Yuanhu stared at Luo Qingtong with his eyes wide open. The latter was too lazy to explain to him that his attack just now had actually penetrated the flaw in his defense and directly nailed into the space between the tendons in his wrist. That area was equivalent to an empty crevice. Apart from a bit of flesh and blood on the surface, it was completely harmless to him. This was also because Yuanhu had helped her before. Of course, Luo Qingtong didn't need his help. However, she had always been a person who repaid kindness with kindness and revenge with hatred. Yuanhu wouldn't go so far as to hurt her. As for the others, it was a different story. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed as she thought of the people who had come to attack Chu Wenhao. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face. Tianyu Branch Institution. On the way to the elite class dormitory area, the group of people who had gone to find trouble with Chu Wenhao was now limping, looking indescribably wretched. Damn it. Yuanhu, that lunatic, he was so ruthless. The long-faced youth rubbed his wound and hissed in pain as he cursed. He still wants to protect that Luo Qingtong. He really doesn't know his own worth. Does he know how many people want Luo Qingtong to be unlucky? Just based on his... Before he could finish his words, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Is that so? I also want to know how many people want me to be unlucky? Especially... Chapter 455. Luo Qingtong? Seeing the girl appear in front of them, the long-faced youth and the people beside him were stunned at first, then said with disdain, "Even if you know, so what? Luo Qingtong, you are just the daughter of a small inferior country's marquis house with the future status of the fifth prince's wife. Even if you know who is against you, what can you do to them?" As he said this, he loudly sneered. The people around him also followed and laughed loudly. Is that so? In this ear-piercing laughter, the smile on Luo Qingtong's lips became deeper and deeper, more and more intense. Then let's see if I can do anything to them. As she said this, the aura around her burst out. Level 9 Great Martial General Realm. In this period of time, Luo Qingtong had completely comprehended all the insights from the battle with Patriarch Fei. Her strength directly rose from level 7 Great Martial General Realm to level 9. The reason why she did not advance to Martial Marquis Realm. It was because she was still waiting for the perfect moment of advancement. In the cultivation of a martial artist, the advancement of every realm was extremely important. The more solid the foundation was, the easier it would be to advance in cultivation in the future. The increase in battle strength would also be more powerful than martial artists of the same level. The same was true for spirit practitioners. There was a perfect state for every breakthrough of a major realm. That was the current realm, unable to advance, unable to be raised, the peak of battle strength. That kind of advancement, once the realm was crossed, could immediately crush those of the same level. Therefore, even if Luo Qingtong could already advance to Martial Marquis Realm, she had been suppressing herself and was unwilling to advance. She wanted to have a perfect realm advancement every time. In any case, at her age, level 9 Great Martial General Realm was enough to shock people. Not to mention, Luo Qingtong's true strength was enough to kill any Martial King Realm expert. If her true battle strength was made public, who knew how many people would be frightened? This was an absolute monster. Not to mention Luo Qingtong's terrifying alchemy skills, just her strength alone was enough to shock the world. The Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy recruited heaven-grade geniuses every year, but there was almost no one who could surpass Luo Qingtong's strength. With her strength and battle strength, once it was leaked, it would immediately attract the competition of the sacred academies. She was afraid that all the major forces in the Holy Dynasty would rush to recruit her under their banner upon hearing the news. As for Luo Qingtong's identity of a small inferior country, no one would care. With the identity and status of those forces, a casual word, Easternly country and the Luo family status would immediately rise. It was not impossible to become an empire. However, that was based on the fact that Luo Qingtong only had this much strength. But in fact, Luo Qingtong had too many abilities and secrets. Array formation, refining pill, refining, and the inheritance of Immortal Palace. If any of these things were revealed, it would be enough to shock the various forces. If they knew that Luo Qingtong had all of these abilities, they would be shocked. Then they would not only want to recruit Luo Qingtong, but also want to imprison her and take her for their own. In her previous life, the various forces and the ancient martial ability world's various encirclement and suppression of her were still vivid in her mind. Luo Qingtong would never easily reveal her abilities and identity. But now, Luo Qingtong sneered at the crowd in front of her who were completely stunned because of excessive shock. The smile on her lips was so bloodthirsty and enchanting. Chapter 456. You. The long-faced youth and the people around him all widened their eyes in shock. 9th level of the Great Martial General Realm. Luo Qingtong's strength was unexpectedly at the 9th level of the Great Martial General Realm. This strength, in the Tianyu Branch Academy, may not be the strongest. After all, in the academy, there were some students who had been in the academy for a long time, Martial Marquis and Martial Kings. But Luo Qingtong was a new student who had just entered the academy. Her strength had already reached the 9th level of the Great Martial General Realm. And this 9th level of the Great Martial General Realm was not an ordinary 9th level of the Great Martial General Realm. The group of people felt the pressure coming from Luo Qingtong's body, and in an instant the aura around them became somewhat stagnant. This was clearly a pressure that only Martial Marquis experts could have. Obviously, Luo Qingtong's strength was enough to advance to the Martial Marquis realm. It was just that she suppressed it and did not advance. 15 years old Martial Marquis realm. Back then, even the 5th prince was not so amazing, right? Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at Luo Qingtong. The expression on their faces was both shocked and at a loss. Wasn't it said that Luo Qingtong was only the legitimate daughter of a low-level marquis, and that her talent and strength were only average, and that she was not worthy of the empire's 5th prince? But now that they saw Luo Qingtong, which part of her talent and strength was average? Which part of her was not worthy of the 5th prince? Her talent clearly surpassed that of the 5th prince. The group of people's faces turned pale. Suddenly, a youth seemed to realize something and turned around to run. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. It's the two of them. The two of them ordered us to do this. He pointed at the long-faced youth and the triangular-eyed youth at the front and was about to run out. However, the surrounding environment was constantly changing. No matter how he ran, it seemed that he was in the same place. He was clearly still in the Tianyu Branch Academy, but it seemed that he had gone to another time and space. Array. When Luo Qingtong appeared, she had already set up an array in the vicinity, enclosing this group of people and herself in an independent space. That was why she was able to display her strength so brazenly. Luo Qingtong, you. That youth and everyone else's complexion had completely changed. Especially the long-faced youth and the triangular-eyed youth. The two of them were considered the planners of this operation. At this moment, their faces were full of panic. Even the stupidest person could see that Luo Qingtong was going to attack them. Not to mention they weren't stupid. Luo Qingtong, let us go. We will tell you everything. I guarantee that I won't hide anything. They begged for mercy with panicked and fearful expressions. However, really? Unfortunately, I don't want to listen to you anymore. She naturally had a way to find out the other party's identity and then give him a big gift. Luo Qingtong looked at them indifferently and waved her hand. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong flicked pills into their mouths. Before anyone could react, they were already forced to swallow the pill. Ew. What did you make us eat? The long-faced youth's complexion was extremely pale. He lay on the ground, desperately digging at his throat, trying to spit out the pill he had just swallowed. However, how could the pill refined by Luo Qingtong give anyone the chance to spit it out? The moment it entered their mouths, it had already turned into medicinal power and entered their bodies. Zombie. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes at them. The pill I gave you is called Zombie. Enjoy the surprise that this pill has brought to you, including the person behind you. Want to deal with her? Very well. Let's see if they can handle the surprise that I've given them. Chapter 457. Haha. A burst of laughter came from the dormitory area of the advanced class. In a courtyard for the advanced class students to rest and play, a group of young men and women in luxurious clothes were gathered there. Judging from their clothes, they were all members of the royal family of Tianyu. Some of them were even members of the aristocratic families of Tianyu Empire. At this moment they were chatting and laughing together. A young man with a feminine face, eyebrows slightly drooping, and a somewhat gloomy expression, was currently surrounded by the crowd. Ah, Zhao, did you really send someone to deal with Luo Qingtong's follower? A young master beside him laughed. I didn't expect that. You acted so quickly and directly took action. What else could it be? The gloomy Zhao played with the wineglass in his hand and sneered at them. If I didn't act quickly, you would be the ones to take action. Everyone knew that the seventh princess hated Luo Qingtong. Whoever could make her unhappy without damaging the royal family's reputation would be favored by the seventh princess. Among the crowd, there were countless people who wanted to curry favor with the seventh princess. The men wanted to please the fifth prince's younger sister. As for the woman, she wanted to curry favor with the fifth prince through the seventh princess. Ahem. His words were so straightforward that the young master didn't know how to respond. Indeed, he had already arranged everything and was prepared to take action against Luo Qingtong tomorrow. But he didn't expect Zhao to act so quickly and be ahead of them. Alas, Luo Qingtong had just arrived at Tianyu branch school. The only person she was close to was Chu Wenhao. Crippling him would definitely hurt Luo Qingtong and make her suffer. But Zhao beat them to it. They didn't know how long it would take for them to deal with Luo Qingtong in the future. Although Luo Qingtong was in this school and there would be plenty of opportunities to deal with her in the future, the person who showed up in front of the seventh princess first would leave the deepest impression on her. The group of aristocratic young masters and collateral members of the royal family instantly felt that they had missed the best opportunity. In the future, when he showed his face in front of the seventh princess, he was afraid that he would not be able to compare to Zhao. Feeling their envious, jealous and hateful gazes, Crown Prince Zhao was very pleased with himself. He had already found out that Chu Wenhao's spot was given to him by Luo Qingtong. He concluded that the other party had a close relationship with Luo Qingtong, so he made arrangements in advance to deal with him on the first day of school. Now it seemed that what he had done was right. When his men crippled Chu Wenhao, the seventh princess would be overjoyed and praise him greatly. At that time, not only would he be able to use this opportunity to get close to the seventh princess, he might even have the chance to impress the fifth prince. At that time he might even be able to raise his status as the heir of the Zhao clan even further. As he thought of this, he became even more complacent. At this moment, someone came to report. Your Highness, those people have returned to report on their mission. Crown Prince Zhao's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked around at everyone and saw that they had all turned their attention to him. He immediately laughed proudly and said, It seems that the matter has been settled. Invite all of them here and tell me in detail about the situation at that time. Those who speak well will be heavily rewarded. Chapter 458. Looking at the people standing in front of him, Zhao frowned. Why did they look so strange? He saw that the intermediate class students' limbs were stiff, and their eyes were lifeless. They looked like they were about to die. Zhao's heart was filled with anger. How could these people be so useless against a new student who had just entered the school? Looking at his appearance, he couldn't have been beaten up by Chu Wenhao, right? They were so useless. Zhao subconsciously wanted to vent his anger. But when he thought of the disciples around him, he immediately suppressed the anger in his heart. Tell me how you dealt with Chu Wenhao. And how did Luo Qingtong feel sad? He glanced at the people around him and said proudly. He said that after crippling Chu Wenhao, he would lure Luo Qingtong over and let her see the fate of her followers. All of this was naturally to please the seventh princess. As soon as he said this, there was a burst of laughter. That Luo Qingtong must be very sad. I heard that Chu Wenhao's grandfather treated her well when they were in Dongli country. A delicate and pretty young lady from an aristocratic family covered her mouth and said with a smile. Zhao's move is good. Cripple him and then call Luo Qingtong over. It's best to tell her the reason why Chu Wenhao was crippled. At that time, who knows how much regret and pain she will feel. A disciple from a branch of the imperial family said. That's right. On the other side, a young lady from an aristocratic family gently waved the round fan in her hand and raised her eyebrows. After crippling his meridians, that Chu Wenhao can no longer stay in Tianyu branch. Even the trash class won't accept a cripple like him. When he is expelled, I'm afraid that Luo Qingtong's heart will be even more unbearable. If that Luo Qingtong's psychological endurance is slightly weaker, she will be depressed and vomit blood. At this point, she chuckled and covered her mouth with the fan. If the seventh princess knew about this, she will be very happy. Zhao's move is brilliant. But it's also because we didn't catch up. Otherwise we might not lose to you. The group of people talked all at once, discussing all kinds of methods they would use to torture Chu Wenhao and deal with Luo Qingtong. Each method was more vicious than the other. They were talking in full swing, but they didn't notice that the group of people standing in front of them had already made a move. There wasn't a trace of expression on the ghostly pale faces. The young man with a long face led the intermediate class students at this moment suddenly raised their heads. In the next second, they suddenly howled and pounced like ferocious beasts. They used their hands and feet to rush at the gathered members of the royal family and aristocratic families. Screams rang out. Those members of the royal family and aristocratic families who were chatting happily did not expect such a thing to happen. In an instant, they were pushed to the ground by the students of the intermediate class and were fiercely bitten. Even though they were stronger than the students of the intermediate class, they were caught off guard and had no time to react. Many of them had their flesh bitten off while they were still alive. That wasn't all. Those intermediate class students didn't seem to be afraid of death or pain. Once they caught someone, they would bite them to death. No matter how they attacked, it was useless. In just a moment, the courtyard that was filled with laughter just a moment ago turned into a terrifying azure field of flesh and bones flying. Chapter 459. When the mentors arrived, there were no longer any intact corpses in the courtyard. All the children of the royal family and aristocratic families who stayed in the courtyard were bitten into pieces, their flesh and blood flying everywhere. Among them, the one who died the most miserably was Zhao. At that time he was sitting in the front, and those students of the intermediate class were all his people, so they were all standing in front of him. The moment the unforeseen event happened, he was torn into pieces in the midst of his screams. Zombie pills. In her previous life, Luo Qingtong was stolen from a terrorist organization. At that time, that organization wanted to capture her to do experiments, but she beat them at their own game and turned them upside down. After Luo Qingtong destroyed the other party's laboratory, she also notified the ex-country's government. Under the joint military force, they directly turned that organization upside down. Luo Qingtong easily took all the resources of that organization and calmly left. That zombie pill was obtained from that organization. Those who took that zombie pill would have their nerve centers cut off, their limbs stiff, their eyes dull, and they completely lose consciousness. The only thing that would be preserved was the order given by the person who gave the pill before their consciousness dissipated. Once triggered, they would fall into a state of madness. All their behavior patterns were the same as the zombies in Resident Evil, except that they weren't infectious. This was originally prepared by that terrorist organization to create panic, but Luo Qingtong used it on those students of the intermediate class. And the trigger that Luo Qingtong set for them was to attack anyone who emitted malicious intent towards her. Didn't those people say that she didn't know how many people wanted to deal with her? Sorry, she didn't need to know. Because after today those people would definitely be reduced by more than half. Luo Qingtong's way of dealing with problems was so simple and crude. Did they find her unpleasant to the eye? Did they want to make trouble for her? Except for a few big heads, she would take care of them herself. Those who followed the royal family of Tianyu and wanted to make trouble for her would all be eliminated by her. She had more important things to do at the Tianyu branch, so she didn't have time to play the childish plot of school bullying with them. Luo Qingtong didn't make a move, but once she made a move, it was shocking. Those who took the zombie pill completely lost their human consciousness and turned into monsters that didn't know pain and death. Their whole body strength were all strengthened and solidified. After becoming crazy, their strength directly soared. Coupled with the fact that they weren't afraid of death or pain, they instantly made those who had malicious intentions towards Luo Qingtong suffer a nightmarish treatment. In addition to those in the courtyard, those who had malicious intentions towards Luo Qingtong in the entire dormitory area of the entire advanced class would be sensed by the zombified students of the intermediate class and launched an attack. This disaster was only completely stopped when the teachers received the news and rushed over to help. But what had happened, it was irreversible. Almost 1/5 of the students in the advanced class were either dead or severely injured. Even those who didn't die had been traumatized and could no longer fight with others. Most of these people were from the big families and royal families of the Tianyu Empire. With so many students dead, the higher-ups of the academy were furious and ordered to investigate the truth. But what was there to investigate? The students of the intermediate class had all been turned into ashes, okay? Chapter 460. Luo Qingtong took a closer look at Song Cheng's teaching schedule. Song Cheng's teaching schedule was basically arranged for the last class in the afternoon. After a day of classes, all the classes would be over. However, Luo Qingtong looked at Song Cheng's attendance schedule for the first half of the year. Her lips twitched. She was about to ascend to the heavens. What the hell? This Song Cheng was so awesome that he couldn't be any more awesome. Luo Qingtong looked at the pages filled with red XXs, which meant that he didn't attend classes. She didn't know what to say. She calculated. In the entire first half of the year, Song Cheng only attended classes 3 times. In the entire first half of the year, he actually only attended 3 classes. How could such an unprofessional instructor stay in the Tianyu Branch Academy? Luo Qingtong looked at his outrageous attendance, and she was in a bad mood. She entered the lower class to get close to Song Cheng, a weirdo who basically didn't even leave his house. Now, he didn't even attend the classes arranged by the school. How was she going to get close to him and learn the inscription technique from him? Luo Qingtong stared at the red XXs on the page and seriously considered whether she should report this to the school. However, thinking about it, Song Cheng had been in Tianyu Branch School for so long. If he dared to do this, he must have something to rely on. Maybe the school didn't even care about the lower class and just let them fend for themselves. This was troublesome. Luo Qingtong frowned and looked at the schedule in her hand. Tomorrow was the official start of classes. Logically speaking, all the teachers should be present. She would just wait and see. If Song Cheng didn't appear on such an important day tomorrow, she could only change her way of thinking. If she couldn't do it openly, then she could only do it secretly. With that thought, Luo Qingtong put away the schedule. The next day she brought Yi Qianxian to class. The latter wore a small silver mask that covered half of his face. Although little Mingzun's round face was soft and cute, it was still extraordinarily handsome. This mask was naturally made by Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianxian didn't want to stay in her sleeve pocket, and Luo Qingtong didn't want him to suffocate. However, Supreme Blackfield had never shown his face in front of others. Luo Qingtong didn't want little Mingzun's face to be shown in front of others, so she made a small mask for him. The mask was of the same design as Luo Qingtong's Rakshasa ghost mask, but only half of it covered Yi Qianxian's face. It was half angel and half devil, but it didn't detract from his magnificent beauty. Instead, it made little Nether Venerable, who had a cold face, look even cuter. Luo Qingtong looked at his dignified expression and could not help but hug him and kiss him a few times. Little Nether Venerable glared at her. He couldn't break free from her demonic claws for a long time, so he could only let her do as she wished. This woman is really becoming more and more unreserved. However, although he thought so, his eyes were indescribably bright, and his lips were slightly raised. Luo Qingtong carried Yi Qianxian to the classroom of the lower class. Little Pig was sleeping soundly in her sleeve pocket. She hadn't been able to sleep well these past few days because of Yi Qianren, alright? Luo Qingtong walked into the classroom of the lower class and walked directly to her seat. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly rushed in from outside the classroom. The figure was very fast and Luo Qingtong was right in front of him. Chapter 461. Seeing his action, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned sharp, and she was ready to take action. Right at this moment, a cursing voice suddenly came in from outside. "Sima Ju, you bastard, how dare you run away?" As soon as the voice came out, Luo Qingtong instantly knew that the figure that rushed in wasn't coming for her. She immediately retracted the power that she was about to use. She hugged little Ming Zun and turned around, dodging the figure that rushed over. The man had already noticed Luo Qingtong when he rushed over. However, the distance between them was too close and he was running in a hurry so he couldn't stop. When Luo Qingtong dodged, he also staggered forward 2 steps and stopped. "You." When they passed by each other, his hand suddenly brushed against Luo Qingtong's arm. Instantly, Sima Ju's face changed. At the same time, Luo Qingtong also felt that something was wrong with her arm. Her arm, where the young man had brushed against her arm, was stained with a trace of poison. Just a light touch and a rub, and she was infected with such a potent poison? Luo Qingtong felt that the poison was quickly seeping into her limbs and bones, but she couldn't see anything wrong with her hand. Moreover, she didn't feel that the other party had any intention to poison her. With Luo Qingtong's behavior, it was impossible for anyone to poison her silently in front of her without letting her know. Was it unintentionally stained before he wiped it off just now? What's wrong with him? How could he carry such a strong poison on his body? Luo Qingtong looked up at the young man in front of her. At this glance, she found that the other party's whole body, including his face, was wrapped with a thick layer of cloth, which wrapped him tightly. Only a pair of dark, midnight eyes were exposed. That pair of eyes was extremely dark, and there was no light in the depths of the pupils, as if everything in the world were silent. "If you don't want anything to happen, go see a doctor quickly." Turning his head, Sima Ju strode away. He didn't want to see the disgust in the other party's eyes. He had touched her, so she must have been infected with his poison. When she realized that something was wrong with her body, she would curse him in disgust and anger. Sima Ju was already used to it. He was the cursed person. However, it seemed a little different this time. Sima Ju walked all the way to his seat and didn't hear any movement behind him. He couldn't help but look back and see that Luo Qingtong had already taken her seat. The poison in her body was gone. Sima Ju looked at Luo Qingtong's arm. The poisonous aura that he could see clearly was gone. Sima Ju was stunned. He looked at Luo Qingtong's arm and felt an indescribable sense of incredulity. How was this possible? No one knew the power of the poison in his body better than Sima Ju. Just a light touch with others would cause them to be infected with the poison. Even if he had wrapped his whole body with a thick layer of cloth, it couldn't stop the poison that grew stronger as he aged. And those poisons were extremely overbearing. Even if they were cured in time, they would feel uncomfortable for a while. How could the other party be fine? Sima Ju was shocked, but he didn't know that Luo Qingtong's shock was no less than his. 10,000 poison body. Chapter 462. After easily dispelling the poison in her arm, Luo Qingtong used her eye technique to scan Sima Ju's body. She immediately saw the strangeness in his body. This youth's body was actually filled with all kinds of toxins. These toxins were intertwined with each other, forming a strange balance. They wouldn't harm this body, but they could infect anyone who touched him with those toxins. Just some of them were enough to make those with lower strength unable to bear it. Luo Qingtong didn't expect to see this kind of physique here. She had only seen the description of the 10,000 poison body in the ancient records of those evil sects that she had destroyed. She had never seen it before. Legend has it that the 10,000 poison body was extremely powerful. A truly mature 10,000 poison body could extract the toxins in one's body at will, forming all kinds of toxins. Combined with martial skills, it was simply enough to kill anyone who touched it. Fighting above one's level was as easy as eating and drinking. However, it was clear that the youth's 10,000 poison body hadn't matured yet, and he was still unable to control this physique. Luo Qingtong was thinking when Yuan Little Tyrant's loud voice suddenly came from outside the door. F***CK. A bunch of trash. This daddy said that they're not allowed to cause trouble in the lower class. Each and every one of them ignored my words, simply asking for a beating. As he spoke, he cracked his knuckles and entered the classroom. Luo Qingtong saw that behind him, a group of people were limping and supporting each other as they left. It was obvious that they were the group that chased after Sima Ju just now. No wonder they suddenly didn't move. It turned out that they were blocked by Yuan Hu. The latter entered the classroom, looked up and saw Luo Qingtong. He immediately walked over in large strides. Yuan Hu, what are you doing? Sitting next to Luo Qingtong was her roommate Su Xiaoxiao. She looked at Yuan Hu, who was as sturdy as an iron tower, and her heart was timid and afraid. However, she still gathered her courage and stood in front of Luo Qingtong. She said to Yuan Hu, "The tutor will be here soon, you can't randomly hit people anymore. Go away, little white rabbit." Yuan Hu looked at her and rolled his eyes. If he wanted to make a move on them, these people from the lower class wouldn't be enough for him to crush them with one hand. "All right, I won't do anything to her," Yuan Hu said and pushed away Su Xiaoxiao, who was standing in front of Luo Qingtong. Although he was an overlord, he would not go so far as to bully the weak. He did not use too much strength in this push. Prick my hand again." He stretched out his hand and said to Luo Qingtong. Yesterday Yuan Hu went back and thought for a long time, but he still couldn't figure out how Luo Qingtong broke his petrification soul seal defense. Could it be that when he was dealing with those people from the intermediate class, he was ambushed and the petrification soul seal's defense temporarily lost its effect? That must be it. Otherwise, how could the other party break through his defense so easily? Yuan Hu couldn't believe it. Especially after the news that almost 1/5 of the advanced class had been wiped out, he was even more convinced of his own conjecture. Those people from the intermediate class were indeed strange. Thinking of this, he immediately came over to find Luo Qingtong to verify. Let's see if the other party could still break through his petrification soul seal defense. Yuan Hu wanted to wash away his shame. He wanted to let this woman know that his petrification soul seal defense was very powerful. Last time she broke through his defense was just a fluke. However, in the face of his words, Luo Qingtong only faintly lifted her eyelids. "I don't have time." She didn't come here to perform a juggling act. If Yuan Hu wanted to jump up and down, that was his business. She had no interest in it. "Hey!" Yuan Hu was immediately angered by her disregard. Just think of how famous his little overlord Yuan was in Tianyu Imperial City. This woman actually didn't give him any face. Chapter 463. You don't have time, right? He snorted coldly and raised his hand to snatch Yi Chenxian. Then you're mine, little doll. When you're free you can... Before Yuan Hu could finish speaking, everyone heard a drawn-out shriek. My hand. As Yuan Hu's scream rang out, everyone looked at his hand in unison. However, everyone looked at Yuan Hu, who was holding his unscathed hand and howling miserably. Was little tyrant Yuan practicing his acting skills? His acting was so fake. Everyone looked at his hand that didn't even have a scratch, their faces full of disgust. They thought that his hand had been broken by Luo Qingtong. In the end, everyone's lips twitched. However, no one knew that Yuan Hu was really in pain. Just now, Luo Qingtong stretched out her hand and broke his hand. Then she quickly fixed it back. It was just that she was too fast and no one saw it. At this moment, the pain of having his bones forcibly broken and reattached was still lingering on his wrist. Coupled with the defense of his petrification soul imprint, the pain of having his bones broken was even worse. That was why he was screaming so miserably. You. He looked at Luo Qingtong in shock. The girl only looked up at him coldly, and her voice drifted into his ears. Don't touch my things again. Yuan Hu, my patience won't always be this good. If not for the fact that Yuan Hu was not a bad person and had helped her once before, Luo Qingtong would have broken his hand long ago. He really wouldn't change. Previously, he snatched the medicinal liquid she gave Chu Wenhao, and now he wanted to snatch Yi Chenxian. Was Supreme Blackfield so easy to bully? Moreover, it was because of her that Yi Qianren's wisp of soul was imprisoned and she lost her strength. Luo Qingtong would never allow anyone to lay a finger on him. I know. Yuan Hu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was really scared this time. His opponent was actually able to ignore his petrification soul seal. One had to know that even a martial king realm expert would not be able to break his hand so easily. What's more, he had the intention of deliberately angering Luo Qingtong, so he raised the defense of the petrification soul seal to the extreme. He didn't expect that it would be so easily broken by Luo Qingtong. And Luo Qingtong's gaze clearly told him that if there was a next time, his punishment would not be so simple. How did she do it? Yuan Hu didn't even see how she attacked just now. Luo? Boss. I'll call you boss. Tell me, how did you do it? Yuan Hu felt as if a cat was scratching his heart. What he was most proud of was his petrification soul seal defense and his innate divine strength. If it weren't for these two things, a martial trash like him would have long disappeared from the imperial capital's Yuan family. Yuan, who was domineering because he knew that he could only be arrogant and domineering in these few years. Anyway, he was destined to be a trash and would not have any future prospects. Why not take advantage of his current strength to beat up those who looked down on him? Anyway, those people would become more powerful in the future, and they might not let go of a trash like him. He might as well strike first and gain the upper hand and teach these people a lesson. It would be worth it even if they took revenge on him in the future. With this thought, Yuan, whose temper became so muddled. Those disciples from the aristocratic families in the imperial capital also had a headache and couldn't do anything to him. But this time he was really beaten into submission by Luo Qingtong. One must know that even when his father, General Yuan, who was at the peak of the martial royal realm, beat him, he had never given in so easily. Chapter 464. Little Tyrant Yuan's demeanor suddenly changed. The crowd, who had no idea what had happened between him and Luo Qingtong, nor did they know what had transpired between them through telepathy, were dumbfounded as they watched Yuan, whose demeanor changed from that of a fiend wanting to teach Luo Qingtong a lesson, to that of a fawning lackey. This scene was simply unbearable to the eyes. Everyone watched as he circled around Luo Qingtong and fawned over her in all sorts of ways. The only thing missing was a tail wagging behind her butt. They suddenly felt that their eyes were damaged today. Otherwise, there must be something wrong with the little tyrant's head. Wasn't this change too big? And so sudden? Could it be that the little tyrant had taken a liking to Luo Qingtong? The people in the lower class naturally did not think that Yuan who had been subdued by Luo Qingtong. After all, little tyrant Yuan was a weirdo who could even look down on some of the elite class students. They would never have thought that Luo Qingtong would be able to easily break through his defenses and subdue him. Now he was following behind her and asking for the reason. In their opinion, there was only one possibility for Yuan whose sudden change, and that was that little tyrant Yuan had taken a liking to Luo Qingtong. Everything that had happened before was to attract Luo Qingtong's attention. For example, pretending that his wrist was injured, everyone's imagination was very strong. In less than a day, rumors began to spread. The Yuan family's little tyrant Yuan had taken a liking to the fifth prince's fiancée and was desperately pursuing her. Luo Qingtong, however, did not know about this. At this moment she was frowning as she stood up. That instructor Song Cheng had not appeared for the entire day. Looking at the bright red X on the class attendance sheet, Luo Qingtong felt that she had to make a trip to instructor Song Cheng's dormitory. Although, according to the information, he had never met anyone. How would she know if she did not try? Luo Qingtong casually prepared a few questions on miscellaneous subjects and directly left the classroom, heading towards the instructor's dormitory. Little Overlord Yuan originally wanted to keep up, but was easily shaken off by Luo Qingtong halfway. I would like to meet teacher Song Cheng and ask him a few questions. In the mentor's dormitory area, Luo Qingtong showed her student certificate of the lower class and explained her intentions. The guards who were in charge of guarding outside the mentor's dormitory had strange expressions on their faces. This was the first time they had seen a student from a lower class come to ask a teacher a question. If this student had come to look for a martial arts instructor or a cultivation method instructor, it would have been fine. This meant that this student was motivated to improve himself. Even if he was in the trash class, he wouldn't be able to hide his intentions. But to ask a miscellaneous subject teacher a question, everyone's heart went into Spartan mode, thinking that there was probably something wrong with this student's brain. The so-called miscellaneous studies were actually all kinds of miscellaneous things. It was fine to learn these things, but it was also fine to not learn them. There were even students who came to ask questions. Moreover, he was a student from the trash class. With a strange expression, the guard asked Luo Qingtong to wait while he went inside to inquire. Luo Qingtong waited outside, her gaze sweeping over the defense of the mentor's dormitory area. Unlike the student's dormitory area, the management and defense of the mentor's dormitory area were very strict. After all, students needed to learn from each other and get to know each other at any time, but the mentors could not be casually disturbed. If one wanted to see a mentor, they had to get the mentor's permission. They could not just barge in without permission. It was the same for the mentors. Before visiting, they had to inform the mentors. Luo Qingtong swept a glance over the defense of the mentor's dormitory area. Very quickly she understood the way to break through it. If Song Cheng was really unwilling to see her, then she could only do it secretly. Chapter 465. At the same time in Song Cheng's dormitory, a person who was almost impossible to appear here was currently standing there with a respectful expression. looking at the old man who was sitting on the rattan chair with his eyes closed in meditation. The dean of Tianyu Branch Academy. If there were any teachers or students of Tianyu Branch Academy here, they would discover. The middle-aged man who was looking at the old man respectfully was the dean of Tianyu Branch Academy. A peak martial emperor expert had a very high status in the Tianyu Empire. Tianyu's royal family and various aristocratic families competed to be on good terms with him. At this moment, the dean, who could do whatever he wanted in the Tianyu Empire and was the ruler of Tianyu Branch Academy, was standing respectfully in front of Song Cheng. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. After a while, he cautiously called out, "Elder Song." Song Cheng, who had been ignoring him, opened his eyes. "You're too ambitious. You want to open the Tianyang secret realm." That was the training ground for the various factions of the Sacred Dynasty, including the headquarters of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. Only saints could open it. The difference between the students of Tianyu Branch Academy and the students of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin didn't need to be explained. Under such circumstances, the dean of Tianyu Branch Academy came looking for him to open the Tianyang secret realm for the students of Tianyu Branch Academy to train. Was he crazy? Although one's strength would increase quickly, it was also very dangerous. Many people from the various factions of the Sacred Dynasty and the students of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin would die every time they entered, not to mention the Tianyu Branch Academy. "Elder Song, I know this is very difficult for you. But, the grand event of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin is about to start, and I want to give it a try. I hope that Elder Song can help me this time on account of our many years of friendship." The dean of Tianyu Branch Academy said humbly. In front of Song Cheng he didn't dare to show any arrogance. The origin of this old man was a mystery, and his strength was unfathomable. Back then, when he came to the Tianyu Branch Academy, he requested that he hide his identity and arrange for him to be a low-level miscellaneous subject instructor. The headmaster of the Tianyu Branch Academy did as he asked. Usually no one dared to disturb him. It was just that the temptation this time was too great, so they couldn't help but beg him to help. If the students of the Tianyu Branch College could really make a name for themselves during the grand event of the Empire of Qin Saint Academy, then it would be a great honor for both him and the Tianyu Branch College. No matter what, he had to fight for it. And the opportunity to fight for this opportunity lay with Song Cheng. The dean of the Tianyu Branch School didn't know how strong the other party was, but it was definitely above the Saint realm. Song Cheng snorted. "All right. I owe you a favor for coming to the Tianyu Branch Academy. Now that you've come to beg me, I'll help you once. But remember, I will only attack once. In the future, if anything happens in Tianyu Branch, don't come looking for me." Song Cheng had to say the ugly words first, lest these people keep on pestering him, thinking that he was someone they could just casually ask for whatever they wanted. The reason he chose to stay in the Tianyu Branch Academy was because it was convenient. It wasn't that he had to go to the Tianyu Branch Academy. Hearing his words, the dean of the Tianyu Branch Academy was overjoyed. He nodded repeatedly and promised that he wouldn't bother him again in the future. Only then did he leave happily. Chapter 466. A student from the lower class? She wants to ask me some questions? Tell her that I'm busy. Song Cheng felt strange. Why did he insist on being a teacher of miscellaneous subjects in the lower class? It was because he wanted to be able to live his life without worrying about anything. He didn't have enough time to study inscriptions every day. He didn't have time to teach students. Song Cheng rejected him without thinking and continued to immerse himself in his inscription experiments. He had an inscription pattern and was about to figure out a clue. He was extremely busy right now. When the dean of Tianyu Branch came, he almost kicked him out of the door, let alone a student who came to ask him some questions about miscellaneous subjects. Luo Qingtong wasn't surprised at all when she heard the guard's reply. She already knew what kind of weirdo Song Cheng was from the information she got. From the looks of it, the other party's obsession with inscriptions wasn't ordinary at all. However, she had already achieved half of her purpose in coming to the teacher's dormitory. Luo Qingtong looked at the defense of the mentor's dormitory area several times, and she was almost done deciphering it. She smiled and thanked the guard before leaving with little Mingzun. At this time Little Pig also woke up. He rubbed his eyes with his little hoof and jumped onto Luo Qingtong's shoulder. He asked, "You're leaving just like that? You don't care about that teacher anymore? What if he doesn't come to class in the future? Are you going to give up just like that?" "Of course not." Luo Qingtong glanced at him. "Give up?" She came to the lower class to learn inscription techniques. How could she give up? However, this Song Ching was really difficult to deal with. Even if he didn't want to see her, couldn't she just barge in? Let's go. We'll come again tonight. Swoosh. It was nighttime. The stars and the moon dispersed and the shadows of the trees flashed. Luo Qingtong's figure flashed through Tianyu Branch and soon approached the teacher's dormitory. Tianyu Branch's defense and management at night were very strict. However, compared to the outside of the school, the patrols inside the school were much looser. After all, the students and teachers who could enter the school were trustworthy to a certain extent. The reason why they still had to patrol and defend was to deal with some rare emergencies. Luo Qingtong's figure easily swept past the defense of the teacher's dormitory area. She quickly flew towards the courtyard of Song Cheng's dormitory that she had seen at the entrance this afternoon. That's right, all the instructors had their own dormitories and courtyards. They didn't need to share a room with others. At the same time, it also made things easier for Luo Qingtong. Earlier in the afternoon, Xiao Chen had already memorized the defensive layout of this place. She did not encounter any obstacles as she approached the courtyard of Song Cheng's dormitory. However, just as she stepped into the courtyard, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. Ninefold formation. Beneath her feet, rays of array formation light suddenly rose up and enveloped her body. Ninefold formation, as its name implied, was a formation within a formation that used 9 as the number of folds. This was something that only an array grandmaster who had studied array formations to the extreme could do. Not only that, only an expert of the Sage realm could provide the huge amount of energy needed to set up the ninefold formation's defense. So far, the strongest array formation that Luo Qingtong could set up was the fivefold formation. It was not because her ability to set up array formations was not good enough, but because her strength was not enough to support a more advanced array formation. Chapter 467. T. Who would have thought? In the dormitory courtyard of a low-class miscellaneous course instructor, there was actually a hidden ninefold formation, which could only be activated by a Saint Realm expert. You must be joking, right? Luo Qingtong didn't dare to hesitate. The bloody light in her eyes intensified. In an instant, her clear and limpid eyes turned blood red. Under the contrast of the blood red color, Luo Qingtong's beautiful face instantly became incomparably demonic. That was a demonic beauty that no one could compare to. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's body completely bloomed. Like a bloodthirsty demonic flower, the peerless beauty was revealed in an instant. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong's figure swept through the layers of formations. Her swirling skirt was like blood-red flower petals, spreading out layer by layer. Under such circumstances, she broke through the layers of formations one by one. The ninefold formation was set up by 9 levels. According to the technique and energy of the person who set up the formation 99, or even 999 variations of the formation, Luo Qingtong broke through nearly half of the formation. Song Cheng, who was originally doing experiments in his room and didn't intend to come out, suddenly exclaimed softly when he sensed the situation in the formation. The formation outside wasn't set up by himself. Instead, it was a formation frisbee that he obtained from an old friend. After injecting his aura, he could activate the formation inside. He placed it in his dormitory because he didn't want to be disturbed by unnecessary people. Considering that this was an academy, the formation's offensive power was turned off. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have been able to break through it so easily. When the energy of a Saint Realm expert was injected into it, even if she could dodge, a light scratch would be enough to make her vomit blood. Seeing Luo Qingtong break through several layers of the formation like a hot knife through butter and was already very close to the periphery of the formation. Soon she would break through the formation. Even Song Cheng, who was immersed in inscription techniques, couldn't help but divert a bit of his attention. Especially after discovering that Luo Qingtong's strength wasn't strong, he was even more surprised. This is a rare good seedling. Her strength was not strong, which meant that she did not rely on external forces to break the array, but her own understanding of the array. This meant that the other party was extremely talented in setting up formations. Song Cheng thought of his old friend. Wasn't he always complaining that he couldn't find a good disciple? Wasn't there a suitable one? With that thought in mind, Song Cheng finally pulled himself out from his inscription experiment. Whoosh. As he raised his hand, the light of the array formation enveloping Luo Qingtong instantly disappeared. She herself also appeared in the hall. Which class are you from? Song Cheng appeared, sizing up the young girl who had intruded into his mansion in the middle of the night. He had no doubt that Luo Qingtong was not a student of Tianyu Academy. Even if it was just a branch of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, it was not easy for others to enter and leave the Tianyu branch. Moreover, he had set up the formation. If the other party didn't have the aura of the Tianyu branch's nameplate, he would have already started attacking. Song Qing didn't care how this little fellow came to his dormitory. Right now, he was wholeheartedly focused on taking in a disciple for his old friend. He immediately looked up and down and was very satisfied with Luo Qingtong. Yes, your aptitude is not bad. Above the sage realm, one could understand the laws of heaven and earth. Song Qing saw through Luo Qingtong's hidden cultivation at a glance. He found that this young girl was already at the 9th stage of the great martial general realm at such a young age and could advance to the martial marquis realm at any time. He immediately nodded in satisfaction. This aptitude was not bad. Although it couldn't be compared to those, but her talent in setting up formations was something that others couldn't compare to. 9-layered formation. She could actually handle it with ease. Not bad. Very good. Chapter 468. Before coming here, Luo Qingtong had imagined countless scenarios, but none of them were compatible with the current situation. First, she encountered the 9-fold formation with the aura of the Sage Realm. Now, this instructor Song Qing wanted to accept her as a disciple on behalf of his friend after casually asking her which class she was from. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. I'm sorry, Instructor Song Qing. I'm not interested in becoming someone else's disciple. I came here this time to learn the inscription technique from you. Song Qing originally looked at Luo Qingtong as if she was an old friend's disciple. However, after hearing her words, he suddenly changed his expression. Inscription technique? He looked at Luo Qingtong coldly. Who did you hear that from? The old man who was smiling and nodding his head while praising her seemed to be Luo Qingtong's illusion. At this moment, Song Qing had turned into an expressionless old man with a strange temper. I don't know any inscription technique. If you don't want to be my friend's disciple, you can get lost now. Song Qing hated it when people used inscription techniques to tease him. In the past, there were students who came to him and said that they wanted to learn inscription techniques from him. However, they treated him as a joke behind his back and mocked him wantonly. Now that he heard someone say that they wanted to learn inscription techniques from him, he couldn't help but flip out. Get lost. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves fiercely and was about to drive Luo Qingtong out of his dormitory. Inside the sleeve, little Mingzun's eyes flashed when he felt the movement outside. He was about to rush out, but Luo Qingtong raised her hand and stopped him through the sleeve. Song Qing's identity was unknown. Luo Qingtong didn't know if he would cause harm to Yi Qianxian. If this wisp of soul dissipated, Yi Qianxian's strength would definitely be affected. No matter how much Luo Qingtong wanted to trick Yi Qianxian, she wasn't willing to let him get hurt because of her. Therefore, she stopped him immediately. It's okay. She quickly transmitted her voice and then suddenly raised her voice. Instructor Song Qing. A true Sumeru spatial spiritual tool can cut through space, gather spirit springs and even create a small world. Everything above is due to the power of inscriptions. It can also enhance the sharpness of weapons, the efficacy of pills, and the potential of the human body. You really don't know the inscription technique? Or is it that you don't want it to flourish in your hands, and you don't want others to know that everything you've done is right? Luo Qingtong's voice was sonorous and powerful, and it resounded in the hall. Swoosh. Song Qing stopped in his tracks. With a wave of his hand, Luo Qingtong's figure, which was about to disappear from the hall, was instantly pulled back by him. You seem to know quite a lot. He coldly snorted and looked her up and down. He had to admit that Luo Qingtong's words had indeed moved him. Song Qing had researched inscriptions for dozens of years. He gave up his original status and hid his strength in Tianyu Branch Academy. Wasn't it all for the sake of proving that he was right one day? You really believe in the existence of the inscription technique? He squinted his eyes and looked at Luo Qingtong. What was there to believe? She still had a pile of inscription technique manuals in her hands. It was just that they were too profound and she couldn't understand them. She had to learn them first. I believe. Luo Qingtong looked at him and nodded. If I didn't believe, I wouldn't have said so much. Isn't that right, Instructor Song Qing? Luo Qingtong smiled and looked at him. From the moment Song Qing pulled her back, she knew that she had succeeded. Chapter 469. Empty words with no proof. If you want to understand these things, you can still find out a thing or two. Song Qing was not so easy to fool. The main reason was that when he was passionate about teaching disciples, he was hurt too deeply. Now, it seemed that everyone was teasing him and mocking him. However, Luo Qingtong's words had indeed moved him. He was willing to give her a chance. Since you want to learn inscriptions so much. Sure. 3 days later, the academy will hold a competition for the reward for the top new student. At that time, 10 weapons will be taken out. I will add in an inscription tool that I have drawn. If you can find it and snatch it, I will believe that you really want to learn inscription techniques. Otherwise, go where you want to go in the future and don't bother me. How about it? Song Qing raised his head and looked at Luo Qingtong. He had an expression that said, if you can't even meet such a request, then get lost. He was not worried that Luo Qingtong would not be the top new student. The other party was obviously a new face and was so powerful. Among the new students, no one could beat her. No matter where she came from, she would definitely be the top student. Okay. Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. However, I also have a request. She looked at Song Qing and said, if I meet your request, I will only learn inscription techniques and will not take you as my master. Luo Qingtong set this condition first. She did not want to take someone else as her master. One accident like Tian Mingzi was enough. There was no need for a second one. You wish. You want to take me as your master, but I don't want to take you as my disciple. Song Qing snorted. At this time, he still did not know that he would beat his feet and beat his chest because of this sentence in the future. He wished that he could go back in time and eat these words back. A good disciple that he had gotten. He had lost her just like that. In the end, he could not get her back no matter how hard he tried. It really made people sad and cry. Okay, then this matter is settled. You can go now. After speaking, Song Qing waved his sleeves and sent Luo Qingtong out. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she stood in the hallway of the mentor's dormitory. Instructor, since you've already sent me out, can't you send me a little further away and at least let me leave the instructor's dormitory? Fortunately, no one bumped into her. Otherwise, she would be charged with breaking into the instructor's dormitory at night. She would not be able to participate in the competition for the top prize of the freshmen 3 days later. However, Luo Qingtong had not expected Song Qing to be so strong. Fortunately, she had not thought of using force. Otherwise, not only would he fail to learn the inscription pattern technique, but he would also inexplicably provoke a Sage Realm enemy. Luo Qingtong patted her chest and leaped out of the instructor's dormitory. Why didn't you let me out earlier? When she left the mentor's dormitory, Yi Qianxian crawled out from her sleeve. He's an expert above the Sage Realm. It's very likely that he will hurt you. Yi Qianxian looked at her with a frown. Luo Qingtong hugged him and kissed him on the lips. You also know that he's an expert above the Sage Realm. What if he knows you? You're just a divided soul now. Don't always act like a high lord. If you're caught by someone and your soul is refined or something like that, your original body will also suffer. Luo Qingtong knew that in this world, there were many methods to deal with souls. She did not understand the realms above the Sage Realm, nor did she know what methods they used. However, she knew that if this divided soul of Yi Qianxian fell into the hands of someone who had a grudge against him, it would cause great harm to him through this divided soul. Since she had imprisoned this divided soul of Yi Qianxian, she had the responsibility to protect him. Chapter 470. Humph. Little Ming Zun looked at her and snorted proudly, I'm not as weak as you think. Others want to capture a wisp of this sovereign's soul? Dream on. It wasn't that he couldn't break free from the shackles of the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. It was just that he might hurt the woman who was connected to the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Did this woman really think that he was that weak? As for his original body, even if his meridians were severely injured and he only had 30 to 40% of his strength left, there weren't many experts on this continent who could hurt him. This woman loved to worry for nothing. Although he thought so, Yi Qianxian liked the feeling of being cared for by Luo Qingtong. Yes. You're the best in the world. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh. Little Ming Zun's arrogant and narcissistic look was too cute. Was Yi Qianxian like this when he was young? Luo Qingtong imagined it and thought of that man chasing after her with a black face. She couldn't help but laugh. If Yi Qianxian knew that his divided soul had such a dark history after being imprisoned, would he be so angry that he would vomit blood? He would probably spend more money to chase after her. But she didn't regret it at all. It'll be great if you can stay by my side in the future. It didn't matter if it was like this now. Luo Qingtong looked at little Ming Zun with curved eyes and leaned over to peck his lips. Then I can hide you forever. Yi Qianxian now belonged to her alone. Humph. Yi Qianxian snorted and didn't argue with this woman. Anyway, she felt that the original body wouldn't let her go after catching her. It was useless for her to say anything. Let her think so. It'll be fine when the original body comes. But then again, why did the original body take so long to investigate the wisp of Holy Brush Spirit? Was there an accident, and the Holy Brush Spirit wasn't in the holy court of the Empire of Qin? The divided soul had all the thoughts of the original body. Every move was no different from the original body. In an instant, little Ming Zun understood the reason for the accident. At the same time, outside the clouds, blood stained the yellow sand, bones in the forest, and the sound of fighting was endless. The sound of blades, bloody frost, and mournful screams were endless. Numerous powerhouses from all over the True Spill continent had gathered in this mystic realm. For the sake of the treasures that had appeared in this world, they would fight each other to the death, turning this place into a bloody slaughterhouse. The battlefield closest to the outskirts of the outside the clouds had just ended. The victorious parties supported each other and were about to leave. At this moment, on the peak of a distant mountain, at the entrance of the land beyond the clouds, a whirlpool suddenly appeared. Someone else is coming. The group of powerhouses looked warily at the entrance. Of them? Dark Venerable? Looking at the silver-robed, black-haired, golden-masked man who jumped down from the top of the mountain like a god, the group of powerhouses were all stunned. The man wore a silver robe with golden embroidery. In the dark, he was noble and extraordinary. His aura was overbearing and difficult to describe. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight with the Dark Regions group, leaving them standing there in shock. The Supreme of the Black Field had also come to the outside the clouds. Didn't he never participate in the fight for the treasures that had appeared? However, they didn't know that Yi Qianxian was here for the treasures in his heart. Luo Qi. This time, I won't give you a chance to escape. Chapter 471. Luo Qingtong brought little Ming Zun back to the dormitory of the lower class. Just as they passed through an aisle of Tianyu Branch Academy, they suddenly heard a muffled roar from the dark woods. Depression, despair, resentment. The smell of death spread. Luo Qingtong's senses were sharp. She turned to look at the woods. Immediately, she saw a person lying on the ground. On the other side, a young man was leaning against a big tree, panting. Noticing Luo Qingtong's gaze, the young man suddenly raised his head and looked at her fiercely. His pair of eyes that were as silent and oppressive as midnight were now filled with hatred, despair, and killing intent. He was seen. Sima Ju looked at Luo Qingtong fiercely. The killing intent in his heart was overwhelming. At that moment he wanted to kill Luo Qingtong who had seen him kill people. But soon the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. With his current body, it was impossible to kill people. Not to mention, the other party was not afraid of the poison in his body. Call for help if you want. He looked at Luo Qingtong indifferently. Then he looked away. It didn't matter if he was expelled from the academy or killed by revenge. Anyway, his cursed body couldn't live for long. He was reaching his limit. Sima Ju lowered his head and looked at the black skin exposed by the torn cloth. Compared to before, it was darker. The darker the color, the stronger the poison accumulated in his body, and the stronger the backlash against him. Now he was gradually unable to resist the invasion of the poison. Anyway, he was going to die. It didn't matter how he died. Luo Qingtong glanced at the person lying on the ground. She recognized that he was the leader of the group that chased Sima Ju during the day. She didn't expect that he would come to find trouble with the other party at night and lose his life. Not interested. She looked indifferent. Then she raised her hand and threw a bottle over. Corpse dissolving liquid. If you have nothing to do, clean up the body. Don't let people find out. What? Sima Ju was ready to close his eyes and wait for death. But suddenly he heard Luo Qingtong say so. He opened his eyes and saw the bottle of corpse dissolving liquid thrown at him. He immediately reached out and caught it. That pair of deep and silent eyes stared at Luo Qingtong. What do you want? Why did she help him cover up the fact that he killed people? He and she didn't have any friendship at all. Wasn't it? In fact, the matter of Sima Ju being killed in the advanced class could be solved. But after thinking about it, Luo Qingtong felt that the other party's body of all poisons was very valuable. This was the first time she had seen such a heaven-defying physique. She really wanted to know what kind of terrifying strength the 10,000 poisons body would possess once it was controlled and erupted. Of all, Shenju had always liked to. Just think of it as for your body. Luo Qingtong looked at him and said, I'm very interested in your body. Before she finished speaking, Sima Ju had already taken a big step back. He looked at her with resentment and shame. Don't even think about it. Luo Qingtong looked at him unhappily. I'm talking about the poison in your body. Who took a fancy to his body? If anyone took a fancy to it, it should be Yi Chenxian, okay? Chapter 472. 10,000 Poison Body. Luo Qingtong looked at Sima Ju with narrowed eyes. Your physique is very special, I'm very interested in it. If you're willing, I can help you control the poison in your body and solve the hidden dangers in your body. But the price is that you'll sell yourself to me in the future and listen to my orders. If you can accept it, then come and find me. If you can't, then pretend I didn't say anything. As she spoke, she turned around and left. Luo Qingtong wasn't a saint. She would help the other party, but the other party had to pay the price. Luo Qingtong didn't need Sima Ju to recognize her as his master, but he had to guarantee that he wouldn't harm her. Only when the blade was in one's own hands could it be sharpened. Otherwise, why would she cut the other party's blade? No matter how curious Luo Qingtong was, no matter how interested she was in the 10,000 poison body, she wouldn't cross this bottom line. Of course, Yi Chenxian was the only exception. Treating his meridians was a huge loss for her. Swish. Luo Qingtong's figure disappeared in front of Sima Ju. Looking at the faintly discernible figure that disappeared like smoke, the youth standing under the tree clenched the bottle of corpse-dissolving liquid in his hand. Luo Qingtong. He muttered the other party's name in a low voice. That pair of eyes that were as still as the midnight sky suddenly burst forth with infinite hope and brilliance. The other party said that she could cure his cursed physique. So, he wasn't some devil but had a special physique? 10,000 poison body? So, there was actually a possibility of him being cured? Sima Ju's heart was beating fast. At this time, the youth still didn't know what this night meant to him. When the name of 10,000 Poison Sovereign followed in the footsteps of Luo Qingtong and spread to every place they went, causing countless people to be shocked, no one would have thought that the weak and gloomy youth would have such a day. Furthermore, no one knew that he had once stood on the edge of the abyss, just one step away from eternal damnation. It was Luo Qingtong who pulled him out and gave him a completely different new life, allowing him to stand above everyone. Whoosh. Luo Qingtong rushed back to the dormitory. Her roommate Su Xiaoxiao was still awake. She was fiddling with something. When Luo Qingtong passed by her room, she suddenly smelled the fragrance of medicine. Su Xiaoxiao was refining medicine? Luo Qingtong was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Su Xiaoxiao to be an alchemist. But isn't this kind of class very popular? How could the mentors of the pharmacy let her go? No matter what, he had to get her into the advanced class. For those with special talents, the lowest starting point would be the advanced class. If they were more talented, they would be in the elite class. After all, there were too few people who had the talent for medicine masters, spirit array masters, and weapon refiners. How could Su Xiaoxiao be assigned to the trash class? Luo Qingtong was surprised. She smelled the fragrant scent and instantly analyzed the medicinal properties of this bottle of liquid in her mind. What surprised her was that the medicinal properties of this liquid refined by Su Xiaoxiao were very stable. It was so stable that Luo Qingtong was surprised. There was almost no fluctuation, very stable. This stability meant that as long as the medicinal liquid was formed, no matter what kind of mistakes occurred, it wouldn't fail again. The effect of the medicinal liquid would also be very good. How could such a talented alchemist be assigned to the trash class? Chapter 473. Luo Qingtong? Seeing Luo Qingtong standing outside, Su Xiaoxiao, who was walking out with a disappointed expression, jumped in fright. She was a little uneasy as she dodged to the side. That, you want to enter? Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly realized that this was her room, not Luo Qingtong's. She immediately blushed. Looking at the girl in front of her who was as nervous and helpless as a little white rabbit, Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh. You're refining medicine? She looked into her room. In the middle of the big desk, there were some auxiliary tools for refining medicine. Su Xiaoxiao nodded lightly, then said with a lonely face, Unfortunately, I failed again. Failed again? Hearing this, Luo Qingtong looked at her in surprise. Didn't you already succeed? She could already smell the medicinal fragrance. I failed. Su Xiaoxiao stood in front of Luo Qingtong, her head drooping. It looked as if there were invisible velvet ears hanging down from the top of her head. She said very dejectedly, the quality was lowered again. As she said this, her eyes were filled with tears. Clearly she had already worked very hard. She didn't know why, but she just kept failing. Su Xiaoxiao also didn't know why. They were both pharmacists, and the instructor also praised her talent. However, every time she concocted a medicinal liquid, not only did she spend several times more time than other people, the grade of the same medicinal liquid she concocted was also several times lower than other people's. No matter how she tried, it was like this. If it weren't for this, she wouldn't have been assigned to the trash class. Thinking like this, Su Xiaoxiao's heart was very sad. Luo Qingtong looked at her and was even more surprised. "Take out your medicine for me to see." The stability of the medicine she just sensed was second only to her. Luo Qingtong didn't understand what Su Xiaoxiao meant by the low quality. But soon she knew. She looked at the bottle of medicine Su Xiaoxiao took out and carefully sensed it. Yellow ranked 2nd grade heart marrow liquid? This heart marrow liquid, shouldn't it be yellow ranked 4th grade? Could it be that she remembered wrongly? That's impossible. Luo Qingtong remembered the instructor talking about it in class today. She even took the opportunity to cram in some knowledge about this world's medicine that she didn't know before. Su Xiaoxiao's eyes started glistening with tears again. "I followed the instructor's instructions in the morning and lowered the quality again. To be able to refine a 4th grade medicinal liquid into a 2nd grade medicinal liquid, Su Xiaoxiao could be regarded as a prodigy that no one had ever done before. One had to know that the grade of the medicinal liquid was set at the very beginning, and it was impossible to change it. At most, the concentration of the medicinal properties of the medicinal liquid was different, and it was divided into 4 levels: low level, middle level, and high level. Su Xiaoxiao directly refined the other party 2 grades lower. This was really exploding. But Luo Qingtong frowned as she looked at the medicine in her hand. Although it had dropped from a 4th grade to a 2nd grade, Luo Qingtong sensed that there wasn't any change in the medicinal properties of the medicine. And it was obviously more stable than a normal 4th grade heart marrow liquid. In other words, other than the lower grade, this bottle of medicine was no different from a 4th grade heart marrow liquid. Was even better. But the medicinal properties were reduced by half. This was the first time Luo Qingtong saw such a strange situation. How did Su Xiaoxiao refine medicine? Chapter 474. That's how I refined it. I did it exactly as the instructor instructed. Su Xiaoxiao wiped the tears from her eyes and said, "But I don't know why, but I just didn't do it right. Maybe I'm too stupid," she said with a desolate expression. She really did follow the instructor's instructions. Little Pig whispered to Luo Qingtong. "But this girl is really too weird. She fiddled with this bottle of heart marrow solution for almost 2 hours. Do you know that? Most people only take an hour to refine this medicine. Su Xiaoxiao actually tripled the time required. Not only that, but the effect of the medicine was also reduced by 2 times. Don't you think this is a scam? She took a long time to refine and the effect of the medicine was low. No wonder she was assigned to the trash class." However, Su Xiaoxiao's talent in refining medicine was top-notch. The instructor only mentioned this medicine today and he only casually demonstrated it, but she came back and refined it. Her talent was already top-notch among the alchemists. If she could raise her refining level in the future, she would definitely become an alchemist grandmaster. But, damn it, her refining ability was really bad. She was basically incurable. Little Pig didn't go out with Luo Qingtong tonight. He stayed in the dormitory and knew everything about Su Xiaoxiao's refining process. He had never seen an alchemist like Su Xiaoxiao whose refining ability was so bad. It was as if the medicinal liquid in her hands had been cursed, making people speechless. Luo Qingtong looked at the medicine in her hands and then looked at the tears on Su Xiaoxiao's face. She suddenly asked, "Then are you going to give up?" "No." Su Xiaoxiao wiped the tears off her face. "I like refining medicine. Moreover, the instructor said that my talent in refining medicine is very good. I believe that as long as I persevere, I can do it. Anyway, it's just taking a little longer to refine than others and the quality is lower than others. At worst, I'll work harder and raise my refining level. Even if I can't compare with other alchemists, I won't necessarily be worse than others," she said firmly. "Yes." Luo Qingtong looked at her and her gaze softened. When she saw Su Xiaoxiao, she felt as if she was looking at her when she first activated her special ability. At that time, she didn't know how to use her eye technique and was hunted down by others. That was what she told herself. Even if her ocular sorcery could only be used as an auxiliary power and could not help her improve her strength at all, she would never give up and bow down to anyone. He would never become someone else's puppet. In the end, her ocular ability erupted and completely crushed the other ability users. She immediately launched a counterattack against the forces that had pursued her before. Luo Qingtong had always believed that as long as you refused to give up on yourself, no one in this world would be able to give up on you. Not even the heavens. I think you can think of it differently. She lowered her eyes and said to Su Xiaoxiao, "Your talent in alchemy is very good, and the medicinal properties of the medicinal liquid you refine are also very stable. Why must you adhere to the formula of the medicine taught by the instructors? If the methods in this world don't suit you, then create a path that suits you. In this world, the reason why geniuses are lonely and the reason why the strong are lonely. That's because the path they walk can't be replicated by others. Su Xiaoxiao, you can definitely walk your own path." Chapter 475. Luo Qingtong poured out the second-grade yellow-grade heart marrow fluid. Seeing her actions, Su Xiaoxiao couldn't help but cry out. In the next second she suddenly covered her mouth. Because in her line of sight, the medicinal fluid that flowed out of the jade bottle was caught by Luo Qingtong. The young girl's hands seemed to have magic. She held the ball of medicinal fluid and kneaded it, making it stay in her palms. Her movements were like moving clouds and flowing water. It was so beautiful that it looked like she was playing. However, Su Xiaoxiao knew that to be able to lift something so heavy with such ease, one needed to have a shocking alchemy ability. The refinement, extraction, and even condensation of medicinal materials required the cooperation of specialized tools. It wasn't impossible to be like Luo Qingtong and control the medicinal fluid with just the strength in her palms. However, one needed extremely precise control over the medicinal properties and flow of the medicinal fluid. Otherwise, if one used too much strength, it would be easy to crush the medicinal fluid. If one used too little strength, they wouldn't be able to control the medicinal fluid and could only let it flow to the ground. Luo Qingtong's actions were already comparable to that of a heavenly alchemist. Only when one understood the various steps and medicinal properties of refining medicine by heart, and at the same time had superb alchemy ability, could they control these medicinal fluids. But now, in front of Su Xiaoxiao, Luo Qingtong just casually squeezed and held the medicinal fluid. That was fine. Su Xiaoxiao then watched as Luo Qingtong took out a few stalks of medicinal materials. Su Xiaoxiao couldn't recognize those medicinal materials, but she could feel that the medicinal properties on them were very rich. It was very obvious that these medicinal materials weren't ordinary goods. The quality of the medicinal fluid you refined is low, so you can make up for it from other places. Luo Qingtong looked at her and said indifferently. What she said to Su Xiaoxiao was something that ordinary alchemists wouldn't think of and definitely wouldn't do. The heart marrow liquid is a grade 2 medicinal liquid. What if I add in a higher grade medicinal liquid that won't affect the compatibility of the medicinal properties? As she spoke, she held the ball of heart marrow liquid in her right hand and a stalk of medicinal herb in her left. She kneaded and squeezed it, and the stalk of medicinal herb turned into a ball of sparkling green medicinal energy. Luo Qingtong suddenly clasped her hands together. No way. So it will. Su Xiaoxiao's words were only half spoken and she stopped instantly. She opened her mouth wide in disbelief as she stared at the medicinal liquid in front of her. It hadn't been scrapped, nor had there been any changes to its medicinal properties. After this ball of medicinal liquid merged with the ball of medicinal energy, its quality had increased. Su Xiaoxiao covered her mouth as she stared at the grade 4 heart marrow fluid in front of her. Large droplets of tears fell from her eyes. Level 4 heart marrow fluid. She stared at the heart marrow fluid in Luo Qingtong's hand in disbelief. Advanced 4th rank. How was this possible? Luo Qingtong had casually added in a stalk of medicinal herb, and it actually increased the quality of the heart marrow fluid? So, it could be done in this way? If this was the case, then wouldn't she no longer have to bear the title of a useless alchemist in the future? Su Xiaoxiao's heart was filled with excitement at this moment. She stared at the medicinal liquid in Luo Qingtong's hand in shock and almost couldn't believe her eyes. What Luo Qingtong had done had completely overturned all the theories she had about alchemy in her mind. The formula of a medicinal liquid definitely couldn't be changed casually. Once the medicinal liquid had been refined, other medicinal herbs and liquids could not be added. Chapter 476. Medicinal power and medicinal power can fuse together before, can reinforce each other, can restrain each other. Why can't there be no reaction? Luo Qingtong's voice resounded in her ears. Xiao Xiao, what you need to do is to find high-level medicinal materials that won't have any reaction with the medicinal materials in the medicinal liquid you want to refine. Add them to the medicinal liquid you want to refine and improve its quality. If you want to succeed, if you want to improve yourself, don't take the ordinary path. Because you have to always believe that we aren't ordinary people. We are destined to stand at the peak. When Luo Qingtong used her eye technique to see through everything to kill people for the first time, she also told herself this. In this world, there was nothing that couldn't be changed. It's just that we didn't think of it and didn't want to change it. Who said that trash had to accept their fate? Without a strong attack power, even if I relied on my auxiliary ability, I could still play you to death. The only thing that could stop us from moving forward and standing at the peak was never an external obstacle, but ourselves. Qingtong. Thank you. Thank you. Su Xiaoxiao was so happy that she wept. Luo Qingtong's words opened the door to another world for her. She didn't want to give up and finally saw hope. I will definitely become the most powerful alchemist. Qingtong, I want to become your personal alchemist. She said excitedly, hugging Luo Qingtong's hand so tightly that it was about to jump up. But soon she remembered that Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were much better than hers. She didn't need a personal alchemist like her at all. All of a sudden, the invisible velvet ears on Su Xiaoxiao's head were about to droop down. She was indescribably disappointed in her heart. Besides alchemy, what else could she help Luo Qingtong with? Su Xiaoxiao desperately stirred her fingers. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out with a chuckle. Personal alchemist? Then forget it. Xiaoxiao, your ability is not limited to this. Become a combat alchemist. Stand by my side. The stability of your medicinal liquid allows you to stand in front of the stage and not stand behind countless people, silently refining medicinal liquid. Luo Qingtong had come into contact with those pharmaceutical maniacs in the 24th century. Which one of them didn't use pharmaceuticals to set off a frenzy? Medicine could save people, but it could also kill people. Ordinary alchemists might not be able to stand in front of the stage and become a fighting force. But Su Xiaoxiao was different. The stability of her potions meant that as long as she had enough potions, she could combine them into different potions with different effects, giving her opponents a nightmarish feeling. Most importantly, the effects of the medicinal liquid produced by such a combination were completely random, making it impossible to guard against. This was the biggest difference between Su Xiaoxiao and other alchemists. She had too many uncertainties. And this uncertainty was the guarantee of her victory. The poisons prepared by other alchemists all had corresponding antidotes. But Su Xiaoxiao didn't. Combat pharmacist? Su Xiaoxiao stared blankly at the young girl in front of her. She listened to her overturn her world one after another. Before today she had never thought that alchemists could also fight. For most martial artists, it was already good enough that alchemists could use poison to protect themselves. Could she still fight? Inexplicably, Su Xiaoxiao's heart suddenly had a feeling of eagerness to try. She didn't know why, but she had a strong confidence. If the young girl in front of her said so, then she could definitely do it. She could do it. Chapter 477. Back in the room, Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong. Why did you think of giving her advice today? Luo Qingtong had never been a person who liked to meddle in other people's business. Probably because you don't want to see her efforts go to waste. Luo Qingtong put him on the bed and went to wash herself. A person who was able to work so hard to get rid of her fate after being assigned to the lower class was worthy of her advice. What's more, she liked Su Xiaoxiao's temperament of not accepting her fate even when she was as low as dust. He couldn't tell that she was as soft as a little white rabbit, but she had such tenacity in her bones. Emma. Yi Qianxian nodded. Her innate talent is good. If your advice is effective, she may be able to walk her own path that is completely different from other pharmacists. At that time she can be of help to you. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the young girl who walked to his side and sat down. The latter had just finished washing herself, and there were still some water droplets on her beautiful face. Her long black hair was scattered behind her, and the strands on her forehead were a little wet, sticking to her face. It made her look like a spirit that had just come out of the water. Yi Qianxian couldn't take his eyes off her. Everything about Luo Qingtong amazed him. Her advice to Su Xiaoxiao was something that Yi Qianxian never expected. The young girl's ideas were very bold and very different from the rest. Every time she was able to give him an enormous surprise. Yi Chenxian thought that it was normal for him to like this woman. In this world, there had never been anyone like Luo Qingtong who could give him all kinds of surprises and unfathomable feelings. She tempted him time and time again to go deeper and understand her more. In this way he fell step by step. The young girl was intelligent and quick-witted, cunning and resourceful, ruthless and bold. When she was cunning she was like a fox, when she was ruthless she was like a fierce wolf, when she was docile she was like a delicate cat, when she was evil she was like a bewitching snake demon. Yi Chenxian never thought that he would fall in love with such a seductress the moment he fell in love with her after more than 20 years of not falling in love. Moreover, she was very disobedient. But what could he do? He liked this woman. He liked her so much that he tolerated her disrespect towards him. He liked her so much that he let her break free from his control time and time again. He liked her so much that he would rather let her imprison this wisp of his soul. What happened? Seeing him staring at her without blinking, Luo Qingtong found it funny and sat beside him. She asked, "Is it because I'm too beautiful that you are stunned?" Luo Qingtong just wanted to tease him. However, yeah, little Nether Venerable glanced at her and answered in a low voice, "I'm stunned." Luo Qingtong's face was inexplicably hot. This man learned quickly. He even knew how to flirt with her now. Fortunately, this was only a wisp of his soul. Otherwise, what could he do? Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and pinched his pink little face. "Since you think I'm beautiful, then quickly serve me." As she spoke, she hugged the little fellow and rolled onto the bed. "Go to sleep." As she spoke, she kissed his face. In the darkness, Yi Chenxian's pair of cute phoenix eyes, which had become smaller, stared at her. After a long time he slowly closed his eyes. "Serve me, right?" This was what this woman had said herself. He remembered it. At this time Luo Qingtong still didn't know how much of a trap she was in. Chapter 478. 3 days later, the competition for the first prize of the new students began. Dang dang dang. The crisp sound of the bell spread to every corner of the Tianyu Branch Academy. The competition for the first prize of the new students had always been a grand event in the Tianyu Branch Academy. In this grand event, the 10 weapons given out by the academy would be fought over by the top students of many countries. The person who won the weapons would stand out from the group of first prize winners. Near the end of the year, the top 10 students of the genius ranking would be recruited into the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. This competition for the first prize of the new students was also called the competition for the genius ranking. Those who were able to stand out from the crowd and win the first prize would become the new top 10 rankers of the genius ranking when the top 10 rankers of the genius ranking entered the main academy of the Great Qin Sacred Academy at the end of the year, continuing their glory in the academy. Therefore, even those who weren't the first prize of the new students would come to watch this competition. They wanted to see who would get the top 10 of the genius ranking in the future. And the older students of the genius ranking would also come to watch. Dang dang dang. The crisp sound of the bell kept ringing. Luo Qingtong, Su Xiaoxiao, Sima Ju and little tyrant Yuan went to the square together. As for how they got together, it all started with Yuan little overlord's pestering. On the second day after Sima Ju came, little tyrant Yuan came and wanted to recognize Luo Qingtong as his boss. He even said that if Sima Ju could come, why couldn't he? Luo Qingtong said angrily that Sima Ju sold himself to her. What about him? In the end, little tyrant Yuan sold himself without saying anything. Luo Qingtong was really speechless. But for little tyrant Yuan he was a martial arts trash. Wasn't it the same no matter who he sold himself to? Anyway, it wasn't his turn to inherit the Yuan family. Moreover, he was hated by so many people in the capital of Tianyu. Maybe in the future, when a disciple of the same generation who was bullied by him broke through, his good days would come to an end. In that case, selling himself to Luo Qingtong would at least let him know how she broke through his defense before he was unlucky. It wasn't a loss at all. Little Overlord Yuan had completely given up on himself. However, what he didn't know was that this fall of his had given him a bright future. In short, little brat Yuan Luo Qingtong shamelessly made her speechless. When the group of people arrived at the square was already filled with people. There was a clear distinction between them. The ones closest to the center of the plaza were naturally the students of the elite class, followed by the advanced class, then the intermediate class and finally the lower class. Luo Qingtong and the others were almost lined up to the edge of the square. They were completely ignored and no one even knew if they were coming or not. Luo Qingtong didn't care about this. She raised her head to look at the huge silver tablet in front of her. She immediately saw Yu Wenma's name at the very top. What's that? Luo Qingtong asked little tyrant Yuan. Among them, only little overlord Yuan knew this the best. Sima Ju was a sensitive youth with low self-esteem, and Su Xiaoxiao was a shy little bunny. Only little overlord Yuan was a little jumpy. Moreover, as a tyrant of the capital, he knew a lot of things. Chapter 479. He explained to Luo Qingtong, the so-called Academy Historical Tablet is a record of all kinds of important events in the Academy, especially those that brought glory to the Academy. Then he saw Yu Wenma's name and said, for example, the fifth prince was admitted into the Academy of the Empire of Qin and became a new student of the Sky grade. Of course the Academy would write about it. Alas, he is a real winner in life. As he spoke, he was suddenly stabbed by Sima Ju. What are you? Before he could ask the question, he suddenly remembered something. *CKU. The fifth prince. Isn't that boss's fiancé? And the kind that despises her. To be honest, even little overlord Yuan looked down on Yuan Mo and the Yuan imperial family's way of doing things. Originally, if you despise someone else, you can break off the engagement. If Yu Wenma thought he was a genius and that Luo Qingtong wasn't good enough for him, he could just break off the engagement. But they didn't. Not only did they not break off the engagement, they also looked down on the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong. After all, it wasn't that the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong had to suck up to them. It was said that the Luo clan had broken off the engagement once before. But the Tianyu royal family didn't allow it. Furthermore, according to some of the secrets of the royal family that little tyrant Yuan had heard before, it was said that Luo Qingtong's mother was the reason why Yu Wenma could have his current achievements and the Tianyu Empire's current status, becoming a powerful empire among the many empires. It was said that it was Luo Qingtong's mother who cured Yu Wenma's innate cold disease that made him a genius. Since entering the Academy of the Empire of Qin, he wasn't much weaker than the geniuses of the other holy dynasties. This kind of kindness, not to mention Yu Wenma's status as the wife, even the Tianyu royal family should treat the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong well. And the result? Little overlord Yuan curled his lips. It was said that the old man of the Luo family came to break off the engagement, but was humiliated by the royal family and chased away. Not only that, the imperial family even sent someone to the eastern border country to teach the Luo family a lesson, asking the aristocratic families and the imperial family there to cause trouble for the Luo family. Which part of these things looked like they were done because of someone's kindness? Even someone as arrogant and despotic as him looked down on Tianyu's royal family's actions. What was the saying again? She wanted to be a whore, but she also wanted to establish a chastity. Tianyu's royal family, on the other hand, didn't want to be labeled as ungrateful, but they couldn't even erect a memorial arch. Just as little tyrant Yuan was complaining in his heart and was about to apologize to Luo Qingtong and change the topic of Yu Wenma, an extremely arrogant voice suddenly came from the front. That's right. My royal brother is such an outstanding person. While speaking, a young girl wearing an emerald green palace dress, surrounded by a group of people, walked towards Luo Qingtong. It was 7th Princess Yuan Shui. The latter was slapped and kicked by Luo Qingtong in Yan Yuju's carriage. It wasn't until today that the swelling on her face disappeared and she came to school. If it wasn't for that, she definitely wouldn't have been able to escape the zombie pill incident. Luo Qingtong felt that she was lucky. At this time, Yuan Shui raised her head and looked at her with an arrogant expression. Luo Qingtong, I heard that when I wasn't here you were directly assigned to the trash class? You really lost face for my brother and the imperial family. Chapter 480. As soon as she said that, everyone in the lower class glared at her. So what if they were in the trash class? They weren't talented enough, but people like Yuan Shui might not be any better than them. Other than some second-generation heirs who were thrown into the trash class because they had no talent, most of the people in the lower class were sent here because their family background wasn't good enough and their talent was average. If they were descendants of aristocratic families, they could still enter the intermediate class or the advanced class with their talent and the nourishment of elixirs all year round. Most of the descendants of aristocratic families entered the advanced class like this. What right did Yuan Shui have to say that about them? Little tyrant Yuan was also angry. Because he was now the trash class person who was too ashamed to come to school, that Yuan Shui was talking about. *CK your grandpa, even if your uncle can tolerate it, your aunt can't. Yuan Shui, what the *CK are you saying? He glared at Yuanxue. Little tyrant Yuan was a reckless person who didn't care about anything. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become a tyrant in the imperial city as a martial arts trash. Although he was destined to not have much future, his divine power and petrification soul imprint would still give him a place in the Yuan family. When he entered the Yuan family army in the future, he wouldn't necessarily be worse than others. Therefore, Great General Yuan was still indulgent towards him. As for the other aristocratic families, they couldn't say anything when their descendants were beaten up. Who asked little tyrant Yuan to be a trash? If your descendants couldn't even beat a trash, how could you have the nerve to settle the score with the Yuan family? Therefore, little tyrant Yuan was arrogant all the way here. Even if he met Yuanxue, he wasn't prepared to give her any face. Anyway, he was a trash who didn't inherit the family business and didn't need to curry favor with the Yuan royal family. Why should he lower his head to Yuanxue? I was wondering why she still had the nerve to come to school. What's wrong? Yuanxue didn't show any weakness. It wasn't that she hadn't heard of Yuanhu's reputation, but so what? He was just a trash who relied on his brute force to show off his power. She was a princess, how could she be afraid of him? Did he really think that his brute force was invincible? She didn't bring the guards by her side, otherwise, any one of them would be enough to beat him to the point where even dogs wouldn't recognize him. Yuanxue didn't believe that Yuanhu would dare to attack her. Luo Qingtong, look at what kind of people you're hanging out with. Yuanxue's gaze was contemptuous and contemptuous. A bunch of useless trash. You didn't want the recommendation that the royal family gave you, you even faked your first place and you were sent to the trash class. Are you trying to embarrass the royal family on purpose? To have a fiancé like you, my imperial brother is really lucky. Before she could finish her words, a slap landed on her face instantly. That slap landed right on the half of Yuanxue's face that had just healed, instantly slapping her face to one side. Blood flowed from the corner of Yuanxue's mouth. Princess. Seeing Yuanxue being slapped to the side, the people around her immediately surrounded her. Luo Qingtong, how dare you hit Princess Qi? Yuanxue also held her swollen cheek and roared at Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong. You be asterisk, how dare you hit me? The same slap overlapped with the one that Yuanxue had suffered in Yan Yuju's carriage, causing her anger and humiliation to soar. What right did Luo Qingtong have to hit her? She only deserved to be humiliated and trampled on. What right did she have to hit her? Chapter 481. Slap. Another crisp sound rang out. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. She raised her hand and slapped Yuanxue again. She slapped Yuanxue's face, which was tilted to one side to the other. Now both sides of her face were swollen like steamed buns. Luo Qingtong. Yuanxue screamed. She glared at Luo Qingtong as if she wanted to eat her alive. Under her gaze, Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. She took Little Pig's handkerchief, wiped her face and threw it on the ground. Why wouldn't I dare to hit you? She sneered at Yuanxue. Yuanxue, who do you think you are? They say the eldest brother is like the father, and the eldest sister-in-law is like the mother. I'm your royal brother's fiancé. You spoke rudely to me, so I have the right to teach you a lesson. Moreover, not only did you insult me, you also insulted your royal brother and Tianyu's royal family. Shouldn't I hit you? 2 slaps are too light. Luo Qingtong looked at Yuanxue with disdain. She looked at Yuanxue as if she was looking at a pile of trash. Everyone's eyes were already filled with shock. They would never have thought that the scene of the 7th princess bullying the unfavored fiancé of her imperial brother would turn into her being taught a lesson. Oh my god. This Luo Qingtong was too arrogant. No matter what, the 7th princess was still the 5th prince's younger sister. Luo Qingtong wasn't favored by Tianyu's royal family and Yuanma. She dared to hit the 7th princess? Wasn't she afraid of incurring the disdain of Tianyu's royal family and the 5th prince? In fact, Luo Qingtong wasn't afraid at all. She wanted Tianyu's royal family and Yuanma to hate her even more. She wanted to cancel the engagement as soon as possible. Save her the trouble. But seeing how Tianyu's royal family was willing to throw away their face and refuse to cancel the engagement, she knew she wouldn't get what she wanted so easily. Since that was the case, why should she give them face? Tianyu's royal family didn't care about their own face. Then she could stomp on them as much as she wanted. It was laughable that Yuanxue was still showing off in front of her. Did she really think that she wanted the position of her imperial brother's fiancé? Since she took the initiative to ask for a slap in the face, then he would fulfill her wish. Luo Qingtong, stop talking nonsense. Yu Wenshui gritted her teeth and looked at her. When did I insult my imperial brother and the imperial family? I clearly only scolded you. You haven't married my brother yet. How can he be considered a member of the royal family? Yu Wenshui still had some brains. She could scold Luo Qingtong, but scolding Yu Wenma and the entire royal family? She wasn't stupid. If Luo Qingtong really taught her a lesson, she really couldn't fight back and could only accept it. But she had only scolded her. What right did Luo Qingtong have to teach her a lesson under the banner of the royal family? Ha! Luo Qingtong sneered. You call me a slut, a piece of trash. What do you think Yu Wenma and the Tianyu royal family are? A slut's nest and a pile of trash? Yu Wenshui, you're brainless. I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your imperial brother and Tianyu's royal family. So that you won't embarrass Tianyu's royal family and your imperial brother when you go out in the future. Luo Qingtong's words were like a slap to Yu Wenshui's face. She lifted her foot and suddenly kicked Yu Wenshui's knee. With a scream, Yu Wenshui fell to her knees with a bang. The sound of those two knees hitting the ground was really painful to listen to. Yu Wenshui's tears immediately burst out. Chapter 482. She roared angrily. When the elite class students heard this, they all came to their senses and rushed forward. Luo Qingtong stopped. The seventh princess isn't someone you can teach a lesson to. You're just the legitimate daughter of a small country's marquis, how dare you? However, when they rushed forward, Luo Qingtong suddenly lifted her foot and heavily pressed it on Yu Wenshui's body. Yu Wenshue was just about to get up, but with a bang she knelt down again. All of you shut up. Luo Qingtong looked at them coldly. This is between me and Yu Wenshue, and also between Tianyu's royal family. I'd like to see which family is so bold and ambitious that they even dare to interfere with the royal family's affairs. As she spoke, she ordered little tyrant Yuan and the others, you guys stop them. If anyone dares to make a move, don't be polite with them. Hit first and remember later. Give me the list of names. I'd like to see who dares to make a move. They want to replace Tianyu's royal family. Luo Qingtong's words were naturally directed at Sima Ju and Yuan Hu. The two of them, one had the 10,000 poisons body, the other had innate divine strength. If they went all out, it would be enough to make these elite class students suffer. After beating them up, she would remember the families of those who made a move. She didn't believe that Tianyu's royal family wouldn't be suspicious of them. Alright, boss, leave it to me. Yuan Hu patted his chest and agreed. Don't worry, if they can break through my defenses, I'll twist my head off for you to kick. As he spoke, he glanced at Yu Wenshue who was kneeling on the ground and grinned. Seventh princess, enjoy. Little tyrant Yuan was also a very vengeful person. He had suffered at the hands of Yu Wenshue before. Now he couldn't wait to see her suffer. Sima Ju didn't say anything, but silently stood behind Yuan Hu and untied the bandages on his hands. Su Xiaoxiao approached Luo Qingtong with red eyes. Her hands trembled as she nervously held the 2 bottles of medicinal liquid that she had refined. When these 2 bottles of medicinal liquid were mixed together, it would form a kind of medicinal liquid that was similar to a rigid medicinal liquid. According to Luo Qingtong's words, Su Xiaoxiao figured it out by herself. She wanted to be the combat pharmacist who stood by Luo Qingtong's side. She could do it. Su Xiaoxiao kept cheering herself up. She stood up timidly but firmly. Some of the students from the lower classes also stood up. In any case, they didn't have any talent and weren't afraid of Yu Wenshue and the royal family's suppression. Now that they had a chance to vent their anger, they naturally wouldn't just stand by and watch. Count me in. Count me in too. *CK. If the tiger doesn't show its might, they will treat us like a sick cat. What's wrong with being in a trash class? The trash class also has its own dignity. Whoever dares to make a move will be beaten back. The group of people formed a circle and surrounded the elite class students who came with Yu Wenshue. They all looked at them with unkind expressions. This was the first time the elite class students had been forced to such a state. Especially when these people were from the lower classes that they had always looked down on. But if they really made a move, they didn't dare. Didn't you hear what Luo Qingtong said? This was a family matter of Tianyu's royal family. If they made a move, they would replace Tianyu's royal family. Who knew if they would really attract the suspicion of the emperor of Tianyu after they made a move? After all, the 7th princess was the 7th princess and the emperor of Tianyu was the emperor of Tianyu. Among them, which family was truly clean? Thinking of this, they didn't dare to make a move. 7th princess. The group of people looked at Yu Wenxue with a guilty conscience, making the latter so angry that blood rushed to her head. Chapter 483. What's going on here? An indifferent and elegant voice sounded. Shi Qingqing's graceful figure suddenly walked out from the crowd. Her face was covered by a veil, and one could vaguely see the outline of her beautiful face. It was obvious that her face was almost healed. However, as a top 10 student on the genius ranking, Shi Qingqing was bound to be highly valued by the academy. In addition, the academy didn't lack alchemists. If she was treated in time, there was a chance that her face could be saved. However, because Shi Qingqing's change of expression at that time was really too shocking. Therefore, even if her face was almost healed, everyone couldn't help but take a step back when they saw her coming over, subconsciously avoiding her. When she saw this scene, the smile on Shi Qingqing's face unnoticeably stiffened. Her graceful steps forward also came to an abrupt halt. It was truly infuriating. Shi Qingqing had never been treated like this by anyone before. Ever since she left the house today, everyone she met along the way had a fearful attitude towards her. It was as if she would turn into a terrifying man-eating monster and pounce on them in the next second. Thinking of this, Shi Qingqing suddenly clenched her teeth. She didn't know what was wrong with her. That day at the class registration she suddenly became like that. The dean of the Alchemy Institute came to investigate, but he couldn't find the reason. He could only attribute it to some hidden poison in her body that was suddenly drawn out that day. Shi Qingqing herself also had a baffled look on her face. Fortunately, after the treatment, those scary lumps slowly disappeared. However, Shi Qingqing's own cultivation was also greatly affected. She almost fell out of the top 10 of the genius ranking. This caused her to be indescribably frightened. During this period of time, she hadn't taken a single step out of her room. She was fully focused on stabilizing her strength. Otherwise, if she fell out of the top 10 of the genius ranking, it would really be a big joke. She forced herself to maintain the smile on her face and looked at Luo Qingtong and Yu Wenxue, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, "My two junior sisters, what's wrong with you? What's the matter? Is there a conflict? You're going to be a family in the future. If there's a problem, you should discuss it properly." Although she was looking at Luo Qingtong and Yu Wenxue when she asked this. But in reality, those words were all directed at Luo Qingtong. "Didn't you say this is between you and Tianyu's royal family? Since it was a family matter, there was no need to talk about it while kneeling. They should talk about it properly." Shi Qingqing was indeed a master of hypocrisy. With one sentence, she put aside Luo Qingtong's lesson and set this matter as a family matter that needed to be discussed properly. As she spoke, she reached out to pull Yu Wenxue. She originally thought that Luo Qingtong would give her face, but she didn't expect the girl to stand there motionless, one foot pressing down on Yu Wenshue's shoulder. Blood mist floated in those clear eyes as he looked at her with an indifferent expression. Senior Shi has just arrived and she doesn't even know what's going on. Don't you think it's a little ridiculous for her to ask us to have a good talk? Yu Wenxue insulted the royal family. I will teach her a lesson on behalf of her royal brother and the royal family. Senior sister, please don't interfere. After all, this was a humiliation to the royal family, so they had to be strictly disciplined. Don't you agree, senior sister? Luo Qingtong looked at Shi Qingqing as she said this. Is that so? Shi Qingqing's hand was stretched out halfway, but she slowly withdrew it. She tucked that hand into her sleeve and looked up at Luo Qingtong, saying, Junior sister is really considerate of the royal family. She was jealous because Luo Qingtong could openly use her status as the fifth prince's fiancée to teach Yu Wenxue a lesson. Chapter 484. But this is the Tianyu branch. Junior sister Luo, the competition for first place is about to begin. It doesn't seem right for you to cause a ruckus with 7th princess, right? Besides. She smiled at Luo Qingtong and said, Junior sister Luo, you're teaching 7th princess a lesson. I know you're doing this for the good of 7th princess and the royal family. Those who don't know might think you're deliberately slapping 7th princess and the royal family in the face. Junior sister, what do you think? So if she continued, she wouldn't be teaching Yu Wenxue a lesson, but deliberately slapping Tianyu's royal family in the face? This Shi Qingqing was quite good at grasping the main point. Luo Qingtong used Tianyu's royal family to pressure Yu Wenxue, so Shi Qingqing used Tianyu's royal family to pressure her. Interesting. Shi Qingqing was the one asking for it. Luo Qingtong looked at Shi Qingqing's proud face hidden under the veil and laughed. Senior sister Shi, you're saying I'm wrong? Luo Qingtong said with a smile. They say the deeper the love, the more the blame. Senior sister Shi, don't you know this? The stricter and more ruthless I discipline you Wenxue, it's all for her own good. Senior sister Shi, on the other hand, keeps saying I have ulterior motives. I don't know what you're thinking. As for slapping the royal family in the face. Luo Qingtong smiled at Shi Qingqing. You questioned my qualifications for first place and sent me to the lower class. Senior sister, aren't you credited for that? You're slapping the royal family in the face, and at the same time you're advising me not to slap the royal family in the face. You've really played both the good and the bad. I'd like to ask, what are you thinking? Or could it be that from the beginning to the end, you only wanted to slap my face? Shi Qingqing was caught off guard by Luo Qingtong's words. She'd played the role of a gentle goddess for so long. Because of her strength and beauty, many people had fallen for her act. She could bemoan the state of the universe and pity the fate of mankind while pouring dirty water all over the other party. However, Luo Qingtong's response was completely out of her expectations. The other party's scheming and eloquence wasn't below hers at all. She wasn't able to suppress Luo Qingtong with her words, but she was suppressed instead. This was the first time Shi Qingqing was in such a sorry state. She looked at the subtle gazes of the people around her and tried to explain awkwardly, Junior Luo, you misunderstood. Before she finished speaking, Luo Qingtong had already replied with an oh. Then she looked at her and said, so, senior sister doesn't think that I did anything wrong and just came over to persuade me? Shi Qingqing was dumbfounded when she heard what she had to say. How was she to answer to this? To say she to Luo Atuz to? Luo Qingtong? But if she said no, wouldn't that prove her hypocrisy and double-dealing? She'd be slapping Tianyu's royal family in the face and persuading Luo Qingtong not to slap Tianyu's royal family in the face? Either way, it wasn't good for Shi Qingqing. Before she could think of an answer, Luo Qingtong's voice sounded leisurely from the other side. Did you hear that? Seventh princess, even senior sister Shi thinks I was right to teach you a lesson. So, you'd better kneel and apologize to me. Chapter 485. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she suddenly exerted force on Yu Wenshue's leg. With a bang, Yu Wenxue was forced to bend over and kowtow heavily to the ground. The force was so great that her forehead broke. Luo Qingtong. Yu Wenshue's body trembled with anger. She still wanted to say something. In the next second, Luo Qingtong hooked her neck and suddenly raised her head. Bang! Yu Wenxue was forced to kowtow again. Yu Wenxue was about to collapse. In front of so many people, she was forced to kowtow to Luo Qingtong again and again. And from the looks of it, Luo Qingtong meant that if she didn't apologize, she would continue kowtowing. Seeing that Luo Qingtong was still trying to suppress her, Yu Wenxue couldn't take it anymore. I apologize, okay? Yu Wenxue bit her lip until it almost bled. She endured the humiliation and said word by word, it's my fault. I shouldn't have insulted you and caused royal brother and the imperial family to be humiliated. It's my fault. Is this okay? Yu Wenshue's heart was bleeding. When had she ever lowered her head like this? In the past, it was always Luo Qingtong who was beaten and scolded in front of her. She never dared to talk back. But now she was forcing her to kowtow and apologize. This slut, don't be complacent. I won't let this go. Yu Wenshue's heart was filled with hatred. Very good. In front of everyone's shocked gazes, Luo Qingtong withdrew her leg from Yu Wenshue's body. Yu Wenxue, remember today. If you dare disrespect me again, I won't mind teaching you a lesson. Luo Qingtong didn't care about how Tianyu's imperial family felt about her. She only knew that since they weren't willing to break off the engagement, they couldn't blame her for using their power and reputation to suppress them. What was that saying again? That's right, since it was her own fault, she had to bear it herself. Tianyu's imperial family was shameless, so she didn't need to give them any face. The next time Yu Wenxue came, she promised to continue trampling on her. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to fall out with Tianyu's imperial family, Luo Qingtong would have killed her. Luo Qingtong sneered and left. The crowd was still in a daze. They thought that it would be a good show where the seventh princess bullied Luo Qingtong, but unexpectedly, it was the exact opposite of what they had imagined. The one who was humiliated was actually the seventh princess. Luo Qingtong was so arrogant, but the seventh princess could not do anything to her. Didn't they say that the royal family of Tianyu despised Luo Qingtong and didn't want her to be a royal daughter-in-law? Why did it seem like it was the other way around? Luo Qingtong was so rude to the seventh princess. It was obvious that she hated this marriage. In the face of her arrogance, the seventh princess could only admit her mistake and lower her head. Were the rumors before the rumors? In fact, the Luo clan didn't want the marriage with the Tianyu royal family. They even came to cancel the marriage, but the royal family didn't agree? Thinking about it, the crowd felt their view of the world had been overturned. Shi Qingqing's heart was filled with jealousy. Being the fifth prince's fiancé was such an arrogant thing. Luo Qingtong dared to be so arrogant because the fifth prince had a high status in the royal family of Tianyu and was loyal to her and refused to break off the engagement. This woman was ruining her status as the fifth prince's fiancé. If it was her, she wouldn't do this and tarnish the fifth prince's reputation. Chapter 486. By the way, Senior Shi, I didn't do as you wished. She smiled. No matter how much Yu Wenxue needs to be taught a lesson, she's still a member of Tianyu's imperial family. Although I don't know why you don't like her, don't try to provoke me into attacking her again. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be provoked and cripple her. It'll be hard to explain to Tianyu's imperial family and Yu Wenma. Don't you think so? Shi Qingqing was stunned by Luo Qingtong's words. What did Luo Qingtong mean? She was saying that the reason why she was so heavy-handed was because of her provocation. Shi Qingqing's eyes widened. She didn't expect Luo Qingtong to do something like that. Luo Qingtong was too ruthless. She was clearly trying to save Princess Qi, so she purposely said those words to stop her. But in Luo Qingtong's eyes, it became a provocation for her to attack the seventh princess. Wait, Junior Luo Yu. Shi Qingqing hastily tried to explain. But as soon as she spoke, Yu Wenxue, who was kneeling on the ground and filled with anger from Luo Qingtong's humiliation, suddenly jumped up from the ground and pounced on her. Shi Qingqing. Yu Wenshue's voice was sharp. How dare you trick me? Shi Qingqing was used to being a hypocrite, always showing 30% of her true self and 70% of her true self. Yu Wenxue was used to being arrogant and didn't understand the meaning behind her words. After hearing Luo Qingtong's words, coupled with the fact that Shi Qingqing had indeed sent Luo Qingtong to the lower class, slapping Tianyu's imperial family in the face, Yu Wenshue's mind went astray. She thought about how Shi Qingqing liked her imperial brother and would always try to curry favor with her. But she didn't like her at all and didn't give Shi Qingqing any face. After all, she was only the daughter of the right minister. So what if she was a bit of a genius? So what if she was in the top 10 of the genius rankings? Could she compare to the heavenly beauties of the empire of Qin's holy academy? Could he be compared to the one who showed goodwill to her imperial brother? If her imperial brother married Luo Qingtong, he would have a good reputation as someone who valued friendship and righteousness. What was the benefit of marrying Shi Qingqing? She didn't even take a look at her own status. She actually dared to covet her imperial brother. Thus, Yu Wenxue had always been disdainful towards Shi Qingqing. She didn't expect that the other party would step on her when she was at her most embarrassing. This hypocritical and ruthless woman. He didn't expect her to be so vicious. She actually dared to plot against him. Yu Wenxue was furious. She glared at Shi Qingqing as if she wanted to eat her up. Because Luo Qingtong was someone Yu Wenmo said he had to marry, she couldn't use the power of Tianyu's royal family to deal with her. But who was Shi Qingqing? They actually dared to deal with her when she was in trouble. *TC. Yu Wenxue rushed up and attacked Shi Qingqing. The latter didn't even dare to fight back. Luo Qingtong dared to hit Yu Wenxue because she was the fiancée of the fifth prince and because Yu Wenxue insulted her first. But what right did Shi Qingqing have to hit the seventh princess? Was she challenging the royal family's dignity? Thus, Shi Qingqing could only retreat while blocking. Seventh princess, let me explain. I didn't mean it that way. Luo Qingtong she was about to say that Luo Qingtong was slandering her. On the other side, Luo Qingtong's faint voice sounded. So when I asked Senior Shi if you were here to persuade me, you didn't say anything. Was it my imagination? The moment Luo Qingtong said this, Yu Wenshue's anger burned even more. That's right. If Shi Qingqing wanted to help her, why didn't she say anything? Chapter 487. Thinking of this, her actions became even more vicious. She even called for the other elite class students to attack Shi Qingqing. These people didn't dare to make a move against Luo Qingtong in case they were accused of meddling in the affairs of the imperial family. However, they didn't have to worry about Shi Qingqing. No matter how powerful the top 10 students were, Could they be more powerful than the fifth prince? Even if Shi Qingqing could enter the holy court of the Empire of Qin in the future, she wouldn't be able to surpass the fifth prince. Under these circumstances, helping Yu Wenxue was naturally the right thing to do. Thinking of this, the elite class students instantly obeyed Yu Wenxue's orders and attacked Shi Qingqing. Bang bang bang. In just an instant, Shi Qingqing fell into a besiegement. However, with Shi Qingqing's strength, it was quite easy for her to break out of this encirclement. The top 10 students on the genius ranking weren't that easy to deal with. However, just as Shi Qingqing was about to leave and find a chance to explain to Yu Wenxue in the future, whoosh! An invisible force suddenly blended in with the attacks aimed at Shi Qingqing and swept towards Shi Qingqing. With a piu sound without anyone noticing, that attack suddenly entered Shi Qingqing's body. Shi Qingqing's body suddenly froze. In an instant, the flow of her aura around her body became sluggish. In this sluggish moment, Yu Wenshue's punch landed squarely on Shi Qingqing's chest. Bang! In an instant, a muffled sound suddenly rang out, accompanied by Shi Qingqing's blood-curdling scream. Shi Qingqing clutched her chest and fell to the ground with a thump. Before she could react, a pile of attacks had already engulfed her. With so many attacks, even if Shi Qingqing was powerful, it was enough to make her suffer. Especially her face, which had been ripped off, revealing a red rash that hadn't completely healed. In an instant, a sharp and shrill cry rang out in the sky. In the next second, Shi Qingqing's figure suddenly flew up, disappearing from the square in a few moments. While Yu Wenxue and Shi Qingqing were fighting like dogs, Luo Qingtong had already walked to the front of the plaza, where the top students stood. Hearing Shi Qingqing's sharp scream behind her, she narrowed her eyes and smiled. There were always people who overestimated themselves and wanted to find a sense of existence on her. She could only reluctantly fulfill his wish. Are you Luo Qingtong? When Luo Qingtong stood up, a voice suddenly came from the side. Luo Qingtong turned her head and saw a girl in purple looking at her. That young lady was dressed luxuriously, her temperament bright and beautiful, dignified and generous. At first glance, it was obvious that she was a young lady from a large aristocratic family. Her body carried a pampered arrogance. However, the young girl in front of him gave off a very straightforward feeling and wasn't annoying at all. She looked at Luo Qingtong, raised her hand and flicked the folded whip in her hand. She smiled and said, "That scene just now wasn't bad. Yu Wenxue needs to be taught a lesson. Otherwise, she really thinks that the whole world is her mother just because she has the support of Tianyu's royal family and UNMO." Luo Qingtong laughed instantly. This young lady was quite interesting. Luo Qingtong had been in Tianyu Empire for so long, but this was the first time she heard someone daring to scold Yu Wenxue, and so ruthlessly. Which family did this young lady come from? She looked at the other party and nodded lightly. "I'm Luo Qingtong and you are?" "Ling Yu." Chapter 488. The legitimate daughter of Duke Ling's mansion? No wonder she dared to say such things about Yu Wenxue. Duke Ling's mansion was a first-class duke's mansion in Tianyu Empire and was greatly relied on by the emperor. Their status in Tianyu Empire was similar to the Luo family in Dongli country. Most importantly, the old Duke Ling and the old master of the Lanyue family were close friends. Based on this point alone, Ling Yu's status in Tianyu Empire wasn't inferior to Yu Wenshue's. No wonder she dared to say such things about Yu Wenxue and wasn't afraid of being punished. While the two of them were talking, Yu Wenxue arrived with her lackeys. Seeing Luo Qingtong and Ling Yu talking together, she immediately snorted and glared at them. Yu Wenxue was also first place in this year's enrollment. As for how much of it was fake, no one knew. In any case, Tianyu Empire was vast and had many counties. It was easy for Yu Wenxue to get first place. She glared fiercely at the two of them. Before Luo Qingtong could say anything, Ling Yu sneered and retorted. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen anyone prettier than you? Yu Wenxue, look at yourself. You look like you're going to frustrate someone to death and you still have the nerve to stand in first place? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" Yu Wenxue had just fought with Shi Qingqing and her clothes were a bit messy, but it definitely wasn't to the point of frustrating someone to death, as Ling Yu said. It was obvious that Ling Yu was deliberately dissing Yu Wenxue. Yu Wenxue gritted her teeth in anger after being mercilessly ridiculed by Ling Yu. "Don't be too smug. Especially you, Luo Qingtong." She couldn't use the power of Tianyu's imperial family to deal with Luo Qingtong. The latter wasn't afraid of them breaking off the engagement. But that didn't mean she couldn't do anything to Luo Qingtong. There were all kinds of competitions in Tianyu branch. Sooner or later she would teach Luo Qingtong a lesson. There was also Ling Yu the bitch who had fought with her since childhood. Yuan Shui looked at the two of them and gritted her teeth. Luo Qingtong was too lazy to pay attention to her. She was barking like a mad dog. However, Ling Yu was unwilling to be outdone. If you can't win, then you'll just say those words. Yuan Shui, after so many years, you still haven't made any progress. If you have the ability, then just do it. If you don't, then shut up. As she spoke, she cracked the whip in her hand. Yuan Shui was so angry that her nose was almost crooked. At this moment, the voice of the principal of the Tianyu Branch Academy rang out. Silence. Following his words, the commotion in the square fell silent. In an instant, the gazes of the crowd gathered on the principal of Tianyu Branch. Today is the competition for the prize for the first place among the freshmen. It's also a grand occasion for our academy's new semester. Everyone please pay attention. Next, I will announce the rules of the contest. All the first-place students will enter the space of the Academy's historical tablet with their consciousness to challenge it. Apart from their own strength, no external help can be used. At the end of the contest, all 10 weapons will be taken away. In the space of the Academy's historical tablet, killing, fighting, and all possible methods are allowed. The winner will have their names recorded in the Academy's historical tablet. The better the results, the higher the ranking in the Academy's historical tablet. I hope everyone will do their best. Bring glory to Tianyu Branch Academy. As he spoke, he suddenly raised his right hand and swung it down. Then let the competition for the prize for the first place begin. As he waved his hand, countless rays of light shot out from the Academy's historical tablet and enveloped the crowd of top students. Swoosh. Chapter 489. Swish, swish, swish. As Luo Qingtong's figure appeared, many first-place students also appeared beside her. Obviously, this was the space in the Academy's historical tablet. As Luo Qingtong and the others appeared here, the surrounding space suddenly vibrated. 10 passageways suddenly appeared in the darkness in front of him. There was a huge bronze door at the top of each passage. A weapon suddenly appeared above each of the 10 passages. These 10 weapons were the spoils of war for the first-place freshman reward. It was very obvious that the first-place freshmen could enter whichever passageway they wanted to obtain a weapon. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes and looked at the 10 weapon shadows floating above the passages. She easily felt a trace of inscription aura from one of the long swords. This trace of aura might be too weak for others to sense. However, Luo Qingtong possessed the life and death dual-form sword and had comprehended the inscriptions on it. Naturally, she was familiar with this trace of inscription aura. However, isn't this inscription aura too weak? Moreover, what on earth is this inscription pattern? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she looked at the long sword. Didn't that Song Cheng study inscriptions for decades? How could these inscription patterns be so ugly? If not for the fact that Luo Qingtong recognized the inscription aura on it, she wouldn't have believed that this was an inscription tool. No wonder Song Cheng studied inscriptions for so many years and others only thought that he was crazy. This talent was simply too touching. Fortunately, Luo Qingtong only looked for him to learn about inscriptions. Looking at the inscription pattern that Song Cheng had drawn, it was obvious that he had mastered the most basic knowledge. However, the inscription pattern that he had drawn was too weak. It was as if there was nothing there. The corners of Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. While Luo Qingtong's eyes were focused on the long sword, Yuan Shui's eyes were also fixed on it. She had received the news earlier that one of the 10 weapons awarded to the first place of the new students had suddenly changed. This weapon was something that the dean had specially instructed them to exchange for. It was extremely extraordinary. That was the truth. The wind and lightning sword was a martial emperor-level spirit weapon. To Song Cheng, it was just a piece of trash that he could use to practice inscriptions on. But to the people of the Tianyu Empire, it was a top treasure. Even the imperial family of Tianyu only had a few martial emperor-level weapons, and they were all with the ancestors. Although Song Cheng had concealed the Wind Thunder Sword's aura, preventing others from identifying the weapon's rank, the quality of the sword was obvious. It was no ordinary weapon. At the very least, it was more precious than the other 9 weapons. Whoosh! Yuan Shui's figure flashed towards the passage. However, as soon as she moved, another figure was faster than her. Haha! Laughter that sounded like silver bells rang out. Ling Yuer's figure passed by her in an instant and entered the passageway. Yuan Shui, you've also taken a fancy to this weapon? Sorry, I'm the first one. As she spoke, she swung her whip, opened the bronze door and rushed in. Ling Yu, Seeing this scene, Yu Wenxue was instantly infuriated. This B*Tsich must have seen that she was going to enter the passageway, so she deliberately followed her in. She even beat her to it. Thinking of this, Yu Wenxue gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. She then rushed in. Chapter 490. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Many first-place students each chose the weapon they wanted and entered the corresponding passage. Many people had noticed the fight between Yu Wenxue and Ling Yu. Some first-place students had also guessed that the weapon in this passage was the best among the 10. However, when they thought of competing with Yu Wenxue and Ling Yu, many powerful first-place students flinched. One of them was the legitimate princess of the Yuan royal family, the younger sister of the genius Yuan Mo. She was extremely powerful and couldn't be offended. The other was the legitimate daughter of Duke Ling's mansion. She was one of the top students among this year's first-place students. Rather than competing with them, it was better to take a step back and fight for other weapons. Perhaps there would be a chance. Thinking of this, except for some first-place students who wanted to curry favor with the two of them, the other first-place students who wanted to win the weapon reward all went to other passages. Of course, this was also because they didn't know the level of the Wind and Thunder Sword. Otherwise, it would be worth offending the entire Chanyu Empire, let alone the two of them. After all, it was a martial emperor-level weapon. If it was given to any expert, it would be enough to receive protection from a force not weaker than the Chanyu Empire. After most of the people had left, Luo Qingtong finally figured out her current situation. Her consciousness had entered the space of the Academy's historical tablet. Because her eye technique was together with her soul, it was brought in. However, Little Pig, the Life and Death Sword, and the 9-story exquisite pagoda didn't follow in. This should be to ensure the fairness of the competition for the reward. Otherwise, the disciples of aristocratic families like Yu Wenxue and Ling Yuer, who were already strong and had various spiritual armors and weapons, would have no suspense at all in this competition for the reward. Now, everyone spoke with their own strength, which increased the possibility of winning. However, for Luo Qingtong, her eye technique was enough for her to sweep through. She was determined to get the Wind and Thunder Sword. Swoosh. Luo Qingtong's figure swept into the passage. 9 Ben's maze. As her figure swept into the bronze door, four big words suddenly appeared in front of her. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows slightly as the scene in front of her changed. Countless passages suddenly appeared in front of him. They were surrounded by layers of dark gray walls. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. In an instant, the bloody light in her eyes intensified and her pupils turned blood red. Luo Qingtong's blood-red pupils were beautiful and bewitching to the extreme, making her look like a monster from purgatory. Beautiful, bewitching, dangerous. Whoosh. She leaped into the air and found the correct path in an instant. Then she dashed into the depths of the maze. Yu Wenxue and Ling Yuer, who had entered the passage before her, were already facing each other. Both of them were the top noble ladies in the Chanyu Empire. Yu Wenshue's family background was strong and her influence was strong. Ling Yuer's identity was not weak either. Most importantly, she was stronger than Yu Wenxue. Almost all the top students who entered this passageway were attached to the two of them. After all, their strength and influence were inferior to Yu Wenxue and Ling Yuer. If they didn't submit to them, they would only be eliminated. On the contrary, if they relied on them as long as the other party was rewarded, they would also be able to obtain great benefits. Chapter 491. Bang, bang, bang. Both parties clashed. Ling Yuer's side was obviously stronger than Yu Wenshue's side. After all, her talent was much stronger than Yu Wenshue's. Some of the stronger top students were on her side. In comparison, Yu Wenshue's side was much weaker. However, just as Ling Yuer and the rest thought they had won, swish, 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 swish. As they chased Yu Wenxue into an alley, countless locust-like arrows suddenly flew out from all directions. In an instant, the top students beside Ling Yuer screamed as they were hit by the arrows and disappeared into the tunnel. According to the school's historical tablet, once one failed the challenge and died, their consciousness would return to their bodies. However, the damage would be reflected back into the body, allowing the person to gain great experience. At the same time, It was also to let the other students who didn't know the situation inside see how the top students failed and directly understand their strength. This was also to train the top students. Ah! The top students who were hit by the arrows screamed as they retreated from the space of the school's historical tablet. They fell to the ground and were in a sorry state. Apart from the fear of death, holes appeared in the places where they were hit by the arrows. Although it was only a little blood, it told them that everything they experienced in the school's historical tablet was not completely fake. Bang, bang, bang. The people around Lingyu disappeared one by one. She also suffered serious injuries. After the round of arrows, she couldn't even stand properly. As for the people around her, from the dozens at the beginning, there were only 5 of them left. Yu Wenxue. Lingyu heart was filled with hatred when she saw Yu Wenxue leading people out from the corner of the tunnel next door. She never thought that Yu Wenxue would set her up. However, they had been fighting ever since they entered the Nine Bends maze. How did Yu Wenxue know that there was a mechanism in the tunnel and deliberately led her here? Ah! Lingyu, you didn't expect this, right? Seeing her expression, Yu Wenxue was indescribably pleased. You can't believe it, right? Unfortunately, Lingyu, you probably don't know that I have a map of the Nine Bends maze. This is the reward and privilege that my brother won. Yu Wenxue raised her head as she spoke. You must know that my royal brother broke through 3 passages in a row. Not only did he get the first place reward of the passage he chose, he also found the hidden nodes between the passages and took the weapons of the other 2 passages. It could be said that he broke the Academy's record in one fell swoop. This matter is still recorded on the Academy's historical tablet. At that time my brother received this reward. It was given to him by the Academy's historical tablet. No one knew about it. When Yu Wenxue said this, she sneered at Lingyu, you want to fight with me? Lingyu, you're courting death. How do you think I should deal with you this time? Whatever you do in this historical steel, the outside world will reflect back on you. Chapter 492. Yu Wenxue, don't you dare. Before she could finish her sentence, Lingyu had already cried out with a pale face. Why wouldn't I dare? Yu Wenxue sneered at Lingyu, You don't think that this is outside, do you? Lingyu, isn't it normal for something to happen in the school's historical tablet? So many people have come in here and something will happen to them. Why should you Lingyu be safe and sound? Are you joking? Ah. When Yu Wenxue said this, she laughed loudly. Lingyu, let me tell you, no matter what I do to you here, your Duke Ling's mansion won't be able to find me. It's a pity that Luo Qingtong didn't come in. Otherwise, I'll let her have a taste of this with you. Let's see if she can still put on airs in front of me as my royal brother's fiancée. Thinking of how Luo Qingtong had forced her to kneel and apologize in front of so many people, Yu Wenshue's heart was filled with hatred. That slut, wasn't she just relying on the fact that her royal brother had to marry her, so she didn't dare to do anything to her? If she made a fool of herself in front of the entire school and lost her reputation, let's see if she can still be arrogant in front of her. She even put on airs as her sister-in-law. How disgusting. Yu Wenxue gritted her teeth as she thought. Not far away, Luo Qingtong, who had just caught up, suddenly raised her eyebrows. She didn't expect to be implicated even when her own people weren't around. Originally, Luo Qingtong was still thinking about whether to help Lingyu. After all, an enemy's enemy is a friend. She really liked the way Lingyu dissed Yu Wenxue. But now, it seemed that there was no need to think about it. She would definitely help Lingyu. Not only would she help, but she would also make Yu Wenxue suffer. She would let her enjoy the punishment that the other party had mentioned. Luo Qingtong snorted coldly. Lingyu, Luo Qingtong's voice quietly swept past Yu Wenxue and the others and entered Lingyu's ears. You can still move, right? Luo Qingtong? Lingyu was shocked when she heard her voice, but she quickly reacted. She didn't say anything and just nodded slightly. Sure, she said in her mind. Okay, follow my instructions. Luo Qingtong's words were unusually concise. She was not afraid that Lingyu would not do as she said. Now, other than her, who else could help Lingyu? Let's not talk about suicide first. Yu Wenxue had so many people surrounding her, how could she not guard against this move? Therefore, if Lingyu wanted to be fine, she could only listen to her. He could only trust her. Run towards the alley in front. Keep running, don't turn. No matter what happens, don't stop. If you believe me, then do it. If you don't, then it's up to you. As Luo Qingtong spoke, her figure had already leaped out from the darkness and swept towards the alley that she had chosen. It was a wooden puppet alley. She would give Yuan Shui a huge surprise. When Luo Qingtong's figure flew up, Ling Yu also made up her mind. Whoosh! The long whip in her hand lashed out like a poisonous dragon. In an instant, the two top students in front of her were sent flying. "You guys cover me and rush out. I won't treat you unfairly," she said to the 5 top students who were following her. The 5 of them were also injured and moved when they heard her words. They instantly rushed in front of those who wanted to stop Ling Yu from leaving and used their bodies to block the other party. Anyway, according to the school's historical tablet, it was impossible to really die. At most, they would suffer a little. To be able to get Ling Yu's promise, it was worth it. Catch her. Seeing Ling Yu rush out of the encirclement, Yuan Shui immediately stomped her feet and chased after her. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ling Yu's figure constantly swept through the passageway and kept rushing forward. Chapter 493. Bang! Just as she was about to rush into the alley that Luo Qingtong had mentioned, a tall figure suddenly rushed out from the front. That figure was almost 2 meters tall and was as sturdy as an iron tower. Its entire body flickered with a metallic luster. Ironwood armored man. When this ironwood armored man appeared, Ling Yu's heart trembled violently. She almost couldn't control herself and stopped in her tracks. However, when she thought of what Luo Qingtong had said in her mind, she still braced herself and rushed forward. Dying in the hands of these armored men was better than being humiliated to death by Ling Yu. Moreover, Luo Qingtong and Yuan Shui didn't have a good relationship. It was unlikely that she would harm her. Even if she really used herself as bait to send herself to her death, as long as she could deal with Yuan Shui, she was willing to die. In any case, she wouldn't really die in the space of the historical tablet. At most, she wouldn't want the weapon reward this time. She wanted Yuan Shui to be unlucky. With that thought, Ling Yu rushed into the alley without any hesitation. She didn't care about the armored men that appeared in front of her one after another. However, the strange thing was that after she rushed into the alley, those armored men didn't attack her. After they appeared, they just stood there. Yuan Shui, who had stopped chasing, was stunned when she saw this scene. She naturally knew that the alley in front of her was the armored man alley, so she didn't continue to chase. However, looking at the current situation, this armored man alley's mechanism array seemed to have malfunctioned. It actually didn't attack Ling Yu. When she realized this, Yuan Shui instantly widened her eyes. How could this be? It was a small matter that Ling Yu ran away, but it was a big matter that she snatched the weapon reward. How could Yuan Shui allow the thing in her hands to fly away? Moreover, it was rare for her to find an opportunity to deal with Ling Yu. If she missed this opportunity, she didn't know when the next time would be. She definitely couldn't let her escape so easily. With that thought, Yuan Shui suddenly waved her hand. Chase. The people around her also realized that the mechanism in front of them seemed to have malfunctioned and immediately rushed forward without hesitation. However, just as they rushed into the alley, a voice rang out. In an instant, those mechanical mechas that were originally standing still and allowing Ling Yu to pass through suddenly moved. Boom boom boom. They charged towards Yuan Shui and the others. Almost instantly, Yuan Shui and the others were surrounded. At this moment, Ling Yu had already rushed out of the alley. Before she could catch her breath, she heard screams coming from behind her. This voice, it seemed to belong to Yuan Shui and the others. Ling Yu was stunned for a moment before she turned her head to look behind her. The corners of her eyes twitched when she saw what was in front of her. In the middle of the alley, the mecha soldiers surrounded Yuan Shui and the others. Then they began to tear their clothes. Ling Yu stared dumbfoundedly at Yuan Shui and the others as their clothes were torn apart by the attacks of the mechanical armored men. Among them, Yuan Shui's screams were about to break through the sky. Ling Yu looked at all of this in a daze, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from beside her. Still not leaving? Do you want to watch a restricted performance here? Chapter 494. Luo Qingtong also added a little something for Yuan Shui and the others. At this time, the group of naked people were hugging each other. Luo Qingtong looked at this scene and felt her eyes burn. She immediately turned and left. Ling Yu also hurriedly followed. You did all of this? She was shocked. What does it have to do with me? Luo Qingtong glanced at her. They were chasing after you. Yu Wenxue and the others were chasing after Ling Yu. Even if something happened, it was related to Ling Yu. What did it have to do with her? Ling Yu was speechless. So she was a professional scapegoat? But thinking about it, if being a scapegoat could make Yu Wenxue so miserable, then being a scapegoat was fine. Thinking about how Yu Wenxue wanted to use such a vicious method on her, but it was all returned to her by Luo Qingtong, Ling Yu felt proud and elated. At the same time, she had a good impression of Luo Qingtong and was curious about her. I didn't expect you to know how to use formations. She looked at Luo Qingtong, her eyes shining. Everyone said that 5th Prince Yu Wenma's fiancée's talent was average and that her strength wasn't outstanding. But now it seems that everyone was wrong. Just based on Luo Qingtong's ability to reverse the mechanism set by the mechanical armors, how could she be a useless idiot with no talent at all? Tianyu's imperial family was really blind. Especially Yu Wenxue. He was so foolish that he couldn't be any more foolish. If she hadn't looked down on Luo Qingtong and was still thinking about how to deal with her, why would the latter help her and not her future sister-in-law? Thinking about the miserable scene Yu Wenxue would face when they went out, Ling Yu felt a burst of joy. What was this called? The evils brought on by oneself were the hardest to bear. As the two spoke, they arrived at the location of the Thunder Wind Sword. Seeing the Thunder Wind Sword floating above the white jade platform, Ling Yu thought for a moment and took a step back. Go take it. Since you helped me, I won't fight with you over it. You can have this reward. In Ling Yu's view, Luo Qingtong's strength was definitely inferior to hers. Even if she was injured, it would be easy for her to snatch the sword. However, Luo Qingtong had helped her and she wasn't an ungrateful person. Without Luo Qingtong, she wouldn't even be standing here. She didn't even know how she would be humiliated by Yu Wenxue. What kind of person would he be if he continued to snatch the reward? Ling Yu disdained to do such a thing and immediately asked Luo Qingtong to get it. The latter turned his head and looked at her with a faint smile. With Luo Qingtong's strength, there was no need for Ling Yu to yield to her. The reason why he didn't immediately take the Wind and Lightning Sword was because he wanted to see what Ling Yu would choose. If the other party was ungrateful and turned hostile, then Luo Qingtong would definitely teach her what it meant to be a good person. However, since the other party had asked her to take it, Luo Qingtong felt that she could give her another big gift. I just heard from Yu Wenxue that Yu Wenma broke the record and received 3 rewards in a row? She looked at Ling Yu. That's right. When the latter heard her question, she was stunned for a moment and then nodded. However, she quickly came to her senses. Wait, don't tell me you're thinking of doing the same? Ling Yu looked at Luo Qingtong with a dumbfounded expression as she wandered around. Don't even think about it. The barrier between the passageways isn't that easy to find. Yu Wenmo relied on half of his strength and half of his luck. Chapter 495. Wang. A door of light suddenly appeared in front of her. Damn. Ling Yu looked at the door of light in front of her and then at the other passageway behind it. Her eyes instantly widened. If she hadn't been taught etiquette since she was young, she would definitely have lost her composure. Oh my god. Luo Qingtong really found the nodes between the passageways. While Ling Yu was still in shock, Luo Qingtong had already picked up the Thunder Wind Sword and looked at her. Together? She said as she extended her hand towards Ling Yu. Let's make it clear first. 9 weapons, take as many as you can. The weapons will be mine and the ranking will be yours. Is that okay? Luo Qingtong really didn't like Yu Wenma's name at the top of the school's historical tablet. Wasn't Yu Wenxue very proud of how outstanding her royal brother was in Tianyu branch? She even wanted to use Yu Wenma's privilege in the school's historical tablet to set her up. In that case, don't blame her for stepping on Yu Wenma. Number 1 prodigy in Tianyu branch? Luo Qingtong laughed coldly and disdainfully. As long as she was willing, Yu Wenma's title as number 1 prodigy in Tianyu branch wasn't even worth mentioning. However, Luo Qingtong didn't want to leave the lower class. Firstly, she wanted to learn inscriptions from Song Cheng. Secondly, she didn't like the teaching methods of the elite class. What one-on-one tutoring, correcting mistakes in cultivation methods and martial techniques. These might be useful to other students and were regarded as treasures. But to Luo Qingtong, who had eye techniques, it was completely useless. Were the teachers of the elite class able to comprehend martial techniques as fast as she could with her ocular technique? Luo Qingtong only wanted them to impart knowledge and didn't need any additional guidance. Therefore she wasn't prepared to accept the glory of stepping on Yuanma. It didn't matter who stepped on Yuanma as long as she didn't see him hanging high above. She didn't know why they were so comfortable using the title of prodigy that the original owner's mother got. Luo Qingtong sneered. Ling Yu'er was still in a daze when she held Lu Qingtong's hand. She didn't expect Luo Qingtong to make such a suggestion. But the girl didn't seem to be joking. She then looked at the door of light that appeared in front of her. Ling Yu'er couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Perhaps what Luo Qingtong said might really come true. Stepping on the number one genius Yuanma? Thinking about this possibility, Ling Yu'er's heart was filled with excitement. Okay. She held Luo Qingtong's hand tightly. While the two of them reached an agreement in the outside world on the plaza of the Tianyu branch. Ah! Yu Wenshue's shriek suddenly resounded through the sky. The moment Luo Qingtong took the wind and thunder sword, the entire passage closed. She and the top students were all ejected from the tunnel. The moment the group of people's consciousness returned to their bodies, their clothes were torn to shreds, revealing their shining white bodies. At the same time, ambiguous marks appeared on their bodies one after another. Those marks made it obvious what had happened inside. Especially Yu Wenxue, the marks on her body were densely packed. Who knew how many people doted on her? Seeing the ambiguous, drooling or disdainful gazes of the people around her, Yu Wenxue screamed loudly and hugged her tattered clothes. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.